Good? I can figure it out. Hello. We're going to get started in just a minute. If everybody could settle in, we'll get this thing going. All right, looks like everybody's settled in, so we'll call this to order. I would like to welcome everybody to Litchfield School District Deliberative Session. My name is Steve Perry. I'm serving as today's moderator in this morning's meeting. I live at 5 Lidston Lane here in Litchfield with my wife Catherine and my son and daughter Nathan and Hannah. Could you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic in which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a few administrative announcements we have to do before we commence our meeting. Considerations for warrants and several housekeeping matters need to be discussed. Obviously, there's no smoking. Please don't do it. Restrooms are located just outside the hallway to the left, and the emergency escape exits are basically the way you came. You can go out those doors, you can go out those doors, just don't trample anybody. Unfortunately, food and drink is not allowed here. We've been given the exception because of the fact that we need to speak and wet our palates. Please adhere to that policy. Please make sure your phones are silenced so that we don't get inadvertent phone calls to interrupt us while we're doing this. And only those who are authorized to vote today may sit in the center and left sections of the gymnasium. Those that are not eligible voters, please sit to the right, which I believe they all are. We'll start with some introductions. I would like to introduce the officials who are hearing today, presenting for the deliberative. I will ask the chair for each of the boards to present their members. So first, I would like to address Christina Harrison from the school board chair.
Thanks, Steve. This morning, I'm Christina Harrison, chair of the Litchfield School Board. With us today, we have Vice Chair Brian Burke, Liz McDonald, Heidi Ames, Tara Hirschberger, and also sitting at our table is right here Superintendent Mike Jetty. Down at the other end, we have our business administrator, Corey Isbicki, our legal counsel, Mike Elwell, and our administrative assistant, Michelle Flynn.
Okay, and now if Chairperson Andrew Cutter from the Budget Committee could please introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, everyone. On the Budget Committee, Andrew Cutter, Chair. With us today we have Vice Chair Mr. Sun, we have Ms. Douglas, we have Mr. Barca, we have the Selectmen's Rep Mr. Leary, we have Mr. Taylor, Mr. Hayes, as well as Ms. Stevens with us today.
Okay, thank you. Now here's the few pages worth of material I have to read to put down the rules and procedures, so here we go. Litchfield operates under what's known as Senate Bill 2 procedures. This means that our goal today is to review, discuss, and amend if necessary, warrant articles that are presented by the school board. Election day is going to be March 8th from 7 to 7 in this area of the school. Polls will be open from 7 to 7, as I said. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, then they will appear on the ballot as you see them today. If we do make amendments to these warrants, then they will appear on the ballot as you've amended them. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize the speaker. The moderator will then open the floor for discussion, questions, and proposals of amendments if appropriate. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment, he or she must present the moderator with a signed written draft, including their address. This will be reviewed for completeness and adherence to state law. We have little index cards with pens right here, so anybody would want to make an amendment, you would write them on those and then present them to me. The moderator will read the proposed amendments so that all voters may understand and afterwards seek a second for the motion. Once the motion is moved and seconded, I will recognize the sponsoring voter to present his or her motion. If this is contradictory to the rules of procedures to discuss a motion before it is properly moved and seconded. As I said, the index cards are right up here. Note that by state law, amendments will not be in order if they change the primary subject matter, the original article, nor can the negative motions to amend where no will be tallied as a yes. We may not have more than one amendment under consideration at any one time, so if we have more than one amendment, we need to address them separately. Every effort will be made to give recognition on all wishing to speak. If you want to speak, then you must come to one of the microphones in the front of the gymnasium. Board members, if you're speaking as a board member and discussing an article, you may remain at the center podium, but if you are speaking as a citizen, you need to excuse yourself and go to a microphone on the other side. When you come up to speak, please clearly state your name and your street address for the record. This information aids the moderator as well as the clerk who's taking minutes for our session. Any motions to end debate must be made immediately upon a voter arriving at the microphone after you state your name and address, and is not required to be written. The moderator will seek a second to the motion and then put the question to the voters. If the motion to end debate is successful by a simple majority, the moderator will immediately call a vote to the question. All those who speak are to keep their remarks pertinent to the motion under consideration and must hold their remarks, let's say, no more than 3 minutes. We'll see how that goes. Personal attacks and profanity is not permitted. All speakers will direct their remarks to me as the moderator, and in the case of questions, I will call upon the appropriate person to respond. One follow-up question will be allowed, however, running discussion is forbidden in the interest of both time and fairness unless there is no one left to speak on the motion, and then I will make my decision as to if it's running on. Please try to avoid redundancy. Proper respect and decorum is expected at all times. According to state law, town and school deliberative district meetings are run by what's called the moderator rules. This means that I am now, the moderator, sets the ground rule for conducting the meeting. However, law allows you as the voters to overturn my rulings by simple majority. To overturn the moderator's ruling, a voter may request a point of order overturn the moderator. Immediately after the moderator rules, the moderator will then recognize the voter who may have decided to explain his or her point of order. The moderator will then poll the voters, and if a majority agrees with the voter, then the moderator's ruling will be overturned. A motion to adjourn will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed and finalized. A motion to table an article will not be in order unless it is made to table until a specific time and place in today's agenda before the close of the meeting. A motion to reconsider an article after it closes will not be in order unless there is no other warrant under consideration and until it is seconded and approved by a simple majority. A motion to restrict reconsiderations of all previous warrant articles will not be in order unless there is no warrant under consideration at the time. It must be between warrants, let's say. It must also be seconded and approved by a simple majority vote. Only those who are on the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote at any time. If the moderator receives a complaint or notice of non-voters voting, then I will require the non-voter to leave the gymnasium. Voters are asked to sit in the middle section, as we said before, non-voters to the right. As you came into the meeting today, the ballot clerks gave each registered voter a sheet of yes or no ballots. These are yours to use for secret ballots. Please do not leave them behind or drop them on the floor. And if we do not use them, or any portions thereof, we would like you to drop them off at the desk on the way out so that we can reuse them later. The moderator must conduct a secret yes or no ballot when 5 or more voters make a signed written request to the moderator prior to a voice hand standing or a division vote of an article. The moderator must also conduct a recount of secret ballot immediately after the public announcement vote when requested by 5 or more voters who are present, provided that the vote margin is not more than 10% of the total votes cast. The moderator must also conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any verbal or hand vote immediately after the vote results are declared by the moderator and before any business has begun. This challenge can be made verbally or written. Remember, under SB 2, town government systems have a secret ballot on every warrant come election day. Approval of all warrant amendments at the deliberative session shall be by simple majority. A voice vote will be the primary choice of method today. If I cannot distinguish the majority of the voice vote, I will then do either standing or raising of hands and make the count that way. Over the course of the meeting, there will be many opportunities to use acronyms. I ask that the boards and members please refrain from using acronyms and just state in plain English what everybody wants to know. It is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak in this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees and council and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If your wish is to continue to do so, please signify by saying "Hey." Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Now we can get down to our business part of the meeting. So, first article we have coming up is going to be the operating budget. And it is, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate an operating budget not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately. The amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote at the first session of annual school district meeting for the purpose set forth therein is totaling $23,766,634. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $24,184,241, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Litchfield School District or by state law. Or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013X and, sorry about that, and to take up the issue of revised operating budget only. On this, we have speaking School Board Chair, Christina Harrison.
Thank you. First, I'd like to take a moment to welcome you all to our deliberative session. We're excited to share this warrant with you and give you further information about each of the articles. It's a fairly packed warrant that accomplishes several goals for the school district. We have 2 balanced and competitive collective bargaining agreements for our teachers and support staff who have shown incredible dedication, commitment, and consistency in the last 2 years in a very challenging environment. We have funding for phase 2 of the LMS renovation project that will set LMS facilities up for another 30 years of operation and reduce our energy bills district-wide, and to allocate further funding for the preparation of the GMS project. So we appreciate the hard work of our administration, our board members, and the budget committee to present a warrant that can meet those goals for a total of 12 cents per thousand tax impact. So Article 1, I'm going to invite Mr. Chair Cutter up to present Article 1, the operating budget.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Not going to read the article again, but just to kind of walk through the process of the Budget Committee's review of the school budgets for the year. We collectively met as a committee and reviewed the budget on November 4th and November 8th from the school. The budget that was delivered to the Budget Committee in early November was $23,931,881. And the Budget Committee reviewed the details at great length on November 18th, as well as before and after that session. We then held 2 voting sessions to look at and analyze the budget, both from really a bottoms up, looking at the individual sections of the budget, as well as a top down, looking holistically across all the lines of the budget. And voting occurred on the 2nd of December as well as the 9th of December. On the 2nd of December, throughout all the reductions, and I have a summary here of what those reductions are, in total we reduced $14,257 from the budget. And on January 6th, at our last opportunity to meet before voting before the hearing, the budget hearing, there was another reduction made of $150,000 from that budget. Just a quick summary. Where we started was $23,931,000, several reductions across CHS, LMS, and GMS. There was a reduction in facilities, business services, as well as voc ed. And again, on January 6th, that final reduction, which was in the special education line. All put together, that lands us at our operating budget of $23,766,634. And with that, just a special thank you again to the committee members for their hard review and detailed questions throughout the process. And with that, it looks like we're turning it back over to Ms. Harrison for some updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to go over the vote to not recommend on the part of the school board on the presented budget. Once the reduction was made by the Budget Committee of $150,000 from the special services budget, the school board re-voted and decided to vote not to recommend it based on that final reduction. When special services budget is prepared, it's based on current students and their projected needs for the following year. So we don't pad that budget. We don't add anything extra into that budget for contingencies. Instead, we have the Special Services Reserve Fund. And so a reduction of $150,000 makes a big impact in that department. In the time since that reduction occurred just this morning, we were notified by our Special Services Director that there have been some changes to that projection, and the presented budget is already in the red for the following year. So we are already planning to dip into the Special Services Reserve Fund, which was intended for unexpected and unforeseen expenditures, if a new student moves in or sudden changes happen, not those that we can foresee. I also have for you, we presented a very lean budget this year to the Budget Committee, and we appreciate their hard work. I just wanted to recognize our administrators and our directors for decreases in departmental operational budgets. There was a total decrease district-wide of $206,172, or reduction of 4.62%, which in a time of record inflation is pretty notable. And then we have salaries and benefits net of 4 full-time positions that will be reducing this year, going into next year. So as you can see, the recommended and defaults are both reductions over last year's budget, and we hope that you will support the budget presented. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, I would like to ask if you have questions or comments. If you do, please come down to the mic and ask your questions.
I guess I'm first, huh? Okay. How much of this budget is...
Excuse me, please state your name and address for the record.
John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield.
Thank you.
Welcome. How much of this budget is salaries and benefits? How much is for special ed, and how much is left for our students?
Sure. About 80% of the budget is for salaries and benefits.
How much is that? Can you give me a figure on that?
Sorry. Do I have
A dollar figure for each one?
I don't right in front of me. Corey, do you have that information?
You take that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Up front, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
So we look at salaries and benefits. Special education is rolled into the program. So salaries and benefits, and then everything else. In salaries and benefits, it's about $18 million. in that range, and the rest of the budget, which is about $4 million, is what's going into facilities and essentially everything else to run the buildings,
Okay. And how much,
including special services. Thank you.
and from last year's budget to this year's budget, what is it, about a $60,000 reduction? Or?
It's certainly a reduction from last year to this year, primarily because there was a reduction in force of four teachers. You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on Article 1? Seeing, oh, sorry.
As a Budget Committee member, I was one of the people who supported the $150,000 reduction to special ed, and I stand by that reduction. In the past, special ed has been budgeted in a very conservative manner. It has been understood that whatever is not spent in that department gets returned directly to the taxpayers. That has been longstanding tradition that has been discussed every year during budget season. This year, the school board decided not to do that. And so the discussion amongst the budget committee was, if we're going to treat this budget like every other budget and take underspends and put it into general fund, then we need to treat it like every other budget and analyze it appropriately. In doing so, historical data shows that we spend, on average, a little over 80% of that budget. That would be a $240,000 reduction. So, the Budget Committee proposed $200,000 reduction, and that did not pass. We settled and agreed on a $150,000 reduction, with the understanding that any unspent funds now get turned into the general fund for additional spends. That is where they will be doing encumbrances, where they use money to do LMS projects, money that they've used for mechanical system upgrades. So to argue that it was an unfair reduction, in my opinion, the rules changed and the budget analysis had to also. And that is why I stand behind the $150,000 reduction.
For the record, let's please show that Ms. Douglas was speaking on behalf of the Budget Committee at the time.
Well, as a member.
Thank you. May I respond
Yes.
to that? Actually, the only thing that changed is the quote-unquote handshake agreement the long-time understanding between the school board and the budget committee from years past. The school district repeatedly said, it's not that we're not returning the money to the taxpayers, it's that we can't promise that we will do that. There are times where the district has the legal authority to treat all of our general funds as an operating budget. In the past, we've been consistent in showing that we do not touch those funds, and we did not renege on our promise to taxpayers that we would continue to hold those aside to return. So I believe that, I still believe that that reduction of $150,000 now shown to be insufficient for our special services department next year. We still stand by our vote of not to recommend the proposed budget.
Money been returned from the special ed unused money to the taxpayers?
With the exception of 1 year in which we received a bill late and we needed to tap into those funds on June 30th, we've returned in excess of the special ed funds to the taxpayers every year since, with current memory, we went back to 2000. Yeah, and even before that. Mm-hmm.
How much of that, but you return money, but how much
What was
money
the average
on
that?
average?
Do you remember, Corey?
And
We typically,
and when you say underspent though, is that money only being spent for special ed and then
no,
underspent?
that's fund
or is it?
balance. So we've returned what is left in the special education fund and additional funds from the remaining fund balance at the end of the year.
Okay.
The district is not allowed to carry currently a fund balance at the end of the year, so
Oh, I know,
every
so that's
penny is
why
returned, right.
The expenditures, April and May, they go way up. I'd like to see those sometimes, see how high your expenditures increase the end of the school year.
I know that in the past 3 years, during the budget session, we have presented our expected end-of-year spending before the money is returned to taxpayers. Thanks.
Any further questions or comments on Article 1? Seeing none, it will be seen on the ballot as presented.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Liz McDonald is the second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion to the motion?
To restrict reconsideration.
The motion was to not reconsider warrant Article 1. Okay. Hearing none, can I call us to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Article 1 will be on the ballot as presented. Now to Article 2, teacher contract. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level. Year 2022 to 2023, estimated increase $351,187. 2023-2024, estimated increase $364,665. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $351,187 for fiscal year 2023. Such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Estimated tax impact per thousand will be 29 cents. For this, we have Ms. Heidi Adams for the school board.
I'll go with Adams, but it is Heidi Ames.
I'm sorry,
That's
my
okay.
bad. I'm Ms.
I'm
Heidi Ames.
flexible, whatever works.
I can't read. I have it written right, but I didn't read it right.
It's okay. Good morning. My name is Heidi Ames. I am a school board member. I was lucky enough to be voted on and put into this position last year. And believe it or not, I really mean it. I had the pleasure of serving on the district team of the LEA negotiations, and it was a fantastic process. It really was. It was very eye-opening. We consisted of, there are two teams, and this is the LEA negotiation team, which was a mix of GMS, LMS, and CHS teachers, as well as their LEA president and LEA secretary. For the district, this was our negotiating team, and we did appreciate our assistance by our attorney, Mike Elwell, so thank you for that, Mike. Our main objective, and I think the main objective of every school district, is to attract, to retain, and to grow excellent faculty. We, as a district, need to have strong educators, and the only way we can do that is if we have a strong contract with our teachers. As you are all aware of the current job market, you're all aware of current inflation rates, it is really hard out there to attract and retain employees in any business across the board. And so we worked really hard to find the balance between being fiscally responsible to the town, as well as being devoted to providing a fair contract to our teachers. Our teachers who truly have gone above and beyond in the past year, 2 years since COVID, and we really appreciate that. We met on for 7 sessions. We had 5 afternoon, evening sessions, and we had 2 full-day sessions over the course of the fall. There was a lot of thoughtful, collaborative back and forth during these negotiations, and it resulted in the contract that you see here. And so with year 1, which is for 2022, 2023, it is an overall increase of 3.7%, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first year that we haven't done a straight percentage across the board. We actually broke down different percentages for cost of living adjustments by step, and so you'll see in steps 1 through 7, there's a 1.5% COLA plus a step. Steps 8 through 11 is a slightly higher, 1.75% plus a step, and then steps 12 to 15 in the first year is 2.25%, plus the step if applicable. Step 15, obviously, that is the highest end of our scale, and there is no more steps after that. And so with this, we were trying to address the concern that the lower steps were actually fairly competitive with our region. Our salaries were in there, but we needed to make some adjustments to the other steps, the higher steps. For year 2, for 2023, 2024, you'll see that steps 1 through 7 remain 1.5%, steps 8 through 11 remain 1.75%, and then steps 12 to 15 are 2.5%. So again, 2.25 in the prior year and 2.5% in this year, which is an overall increase of 3.76%. In addition to negotiating salary, there's always language conversations that need to take place. And we were able during this contract, I'm sure a lot of you noticed, usually this is a 3-year contract. We come for you asking for you to approve 3 years. We did a 2-year contract. We agreed on that this year because we wanted to try to avoid continuing having the LEA and the SSA negotiations during the same year and on the same warrant. And so we were able to negotiate the 2-year contract. We were also able to clarify planning time language and provide that uniform collaboration time amongst the 3 schools. There was some differences between that collaboration time, and we wanted there to be that common planning time that's similar amongst the 3 different schools. We added language regarding remote learning on emergency days. That is something that had to be contracted. I know that's something that, especially with yesterday, some people aren't a big fan of, but this truly allows us to be able to have that flexibility to be able to continue remote learning and hopefully get out earlier at the end of the year. Additionally, a lot of these language changes have opened the door, we're not there yet, but have opened the door to conversations about our district changing from days to hours. And so we were able to negotiate all of that. We also were able to negotiate a start 7 days prior to Labor Day rather than 5 days prior to Labor Day. Again, the process was collaborative. We worked with a really great team. And I hope that you will approve this warrant. So I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments pertaining to Article 2?
Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive. Question, a brief summary of anything, any changes to other benefits such as medical or dental?
Sure. There was no change to the percentages for the health insurance, for medical insurance. For dental, the benefit was raised from $1,000 to $1,500, and we are now offering a vision plan, which is something we haven't done, but it will be at 100% cost of the employee if they choose to elect it.
When you say 1,000 to 1,500, is that 1,000 more or 1,000 less that the people have to pay?
It's 500 more, so it used to be
Right, yeah.
1,000, and then it'll now be the 1,500.
Okay.
Don't hurt yourself, we have plenty of time.
I just want to clarify, because I wasn't sure, Robin Corbeil, I was on the negotiating committee. Ralph, it isn't that the district pays $500 more for our dental. It's just the benefit deductible increases from 1,000 to 1,500. So we pay a little bit more, I think, as a district, but not extra. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I was a little confused just hearing the way the question was asked.
Yes. It is not a $500 increase. Yes. Dental cost, as you can see on this slide, the $6,258, that's the increase.
Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich Street. Well, I think the strength of a school district is with the teachers, so I'm in favor of this, and plus I'm in favor of the teachers having good health, good teeth, and good vision.
Okay, is there any further questions or comments pertaining to Article 2? Hearing and seeing none, Article 2 will be on The ballot as presented.
I would like to move to restrict reconsideration on this Article 2.
Are we really worried about this?
Just want to be clear. Yep.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. The yeas have it. Motion to reconsider is good. So now we have Article 3, special meeting. Shall the Litchfield School District, if Article 2 is defeated, authorize the Litchfield School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 2 cost items only? On this, we also have Heidi Ames speaking from the school board.
Thank you. As many of you may recall, 3 years ago, the LEA contract was defeated by the voters. The LEA negotiation team and the district negotiation team went back to the drawing board. They came up with a new agreement, and under that process, they were able to petition the court to have a special election to have the LEA contract approved by the voters before the school year. I think it was actually in September. During that school year. So the teachers in that scenario were not without a raise, were not without a contract for the foregoing year. We did not want to have a year where they skipped any raises. There has since been legislation that restricts and prevents the ability to be able to do that. So what we are asking the Litchfield voters to do, if you are not able to support warrant Article 2, which we hope you will, but if you are not able to support that, we're asking that you give us another chance to go back to the drawing board, because especially, as I said, in this job market, and then particularly with some upcoming retirements that we have with our force, we need to be able to attract and retain teachers, which means we need to be able to have competitive salaries. So we are asking that you give us, by voting yes on this article and allowing it to proceed, we are asking that you allow us that opportunity to go back to renegotiating and to address some of the concerns that we may hear related to that if it's defeated, so we can bring it forward again.
Okay, questions or comments pertaining to Article 3?
Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive, and I was the state rep that put that bill in, that passed. I said no means no. I've been here for more than 45 years in Litchfield. I've been on the school board. I've been on the negotiation team a number of times. And we've had failed contracts before, and the world doesn't come to an end. So that's why I put in that bill, no means no. So even if you pass I would recommend, vote for 2, sounds good to me, but vote no on 3. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 3 will be on the ballot as presented. Now on to Article 4. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Support Staff Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels? And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $99,433 for fiscal year 2023, such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement for those that would have been paid at current staffing levels. Estimated tax impact per thousand is approximately 8 cents. And on this, we have Ms. Tara Hoshberger speaking on behalf of the school board.
Nailed it. Nailed the name. Hi. We've got the LSSA negotiation team up there. I see 2 in the audience. Thank you for coming. It really was, like Heidi said, it was a pleasure to be on this negotiating team. We met over the summer. We got it done early. We wanted to get a jump start before the school started, and so fortunately, through a series of gives and takes, we were able to come to an agreement before even LSA started to meet. So again, the goal was to get these contracts on different years to allow the voters to have them on different warrants each year. So we'll go to the next. These 4 people are, we had 2 school board members, the superintendent and the director of human resources on the school board team. along with the LSSA members. There was one from each school. These support professionals support educators, school leadership, and students as well. They provide invaluable services and are essential partners in a child's education. They help keep our schools running smoothly, and they protect all of our taxpayers' investments in our infrastructure. So for those reasons, we really need to attract, retain, and grow this excellent staff. And so that is the goal of this new contract, which is the 3-year contract. And there are 5 employee groups within this bargaining group. Custodians and food service workers are 2 of those, and those both have, for all 3 years, have a 0.5% COLA that is going to be added to the grid, with 1 step equal to 3%. Again, they're separate groups, but the agreement was the same for both of them. For paraprofessionals, and you'll notice in a couple of employee groups here, we've made more concise the tiers, and the paraprofessionals is one of them. We're changing the 3-tier grid based on education to 1 grid with no education separation. Year 1 is a 1.5% COLA added to the grid, and again, 1 step equal to 3%. Years 2 and 3, a 1% added to the COLA, or 1% COLA added to the grid, with 1 step equal to 3%. For monitors, and these are our lunch and recess monitors, we're creating a step schedule based on years of service, grouped by 3 years at a time for a 4-step total. Adding for all years, 2% COLA added to the grid with 1 step equal to 2%. And then for administrative assistants, again, this is another area where we made the grid more concise. We changed the 3-tier grid to 2 tiers. And then in year 1, a 0.25% COLA added to the grid with 1 step equal to 3%. And year 2, 1% COLA added to the grid with 1 step equal to 3%. So those are the 5 employee groups within the bargaining unit. Some other highlights of the benefits are 2 additional sick days added for the school year staff, so they go from 5 to 7 sick days. The sick bank is now voluntary, and the district is going to match donated days. And we're going to allow all staff, to help custodians and food service when short-staffed. And that has been a critical component, allowing our custodians and food service to get critical help, especially during the pandemic. And I think everybody saw the value of that continuing forward. Are there any questions?
Okay, any questions or comments pertaining to Article 4?
Robin Corbeil, 4 Smith Court. I guess my one concern or consideration is 3 years, is this enough? Because when I look back the last 5 years, and especially the last 2 years, we can't fill these positions. So I hope, and I guess I'm asking because I don't know and I apologize for not knowing, is it possible to make side arrangements and increase these and bring warrant articles in these next 2 years if we find that this is not enough? Because I know that my children can make more hostessing at any restaurant in town than we can afford to pay our paras right now. And those paras do critical work, and they allow teachers to do better work when they are fully staffed. So I think that's my only concern, is it's a 3-year contract, and I love the idea of a 3-year contract and them not having to be able to stress. I just want to make sure that if we get to next year and we realize that the minimum wage has come way up and we can't compete with other districts or other employee opportunities, that we can fix that so that we can retain the good people that we have and not force them to take other jobs because they have to.
I hear what you're saying, Robin, and that would have to be voted on, and so I would defer to Mike as to far as whether or not you know, I mean, if a I don't know if another agreement could be brought to the table while there's one existing.
The legal answer is yes. If the board and the union mutually agreed to amend their collective bargaining agreement and then brought it to the voters and the voters approved that, yes, it could be amended.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, Bob Leary, 172 Charles Bancroft Highway. I'm going to step away from my Budget Committee seat and come up as a private citizen. With this contract, and I'm going to be an advocate for my wife on this, after 25 years in the district, she gets 0 raise. There are all kinds of bumps and slides and step-ups and all this other stuff. But a 25-year employee with exemplary reviews every single year, 3 of the principals that she has worked for at least over the years has said she is the best admin assistant they've ever had. She does the accounting, the purchasing, she does way more than an admin assistant. My question to you and to the superintendent is, how does this person go without a raise in this contract? And why should the people vote for it? And a follow-up question would be, and what are you going to do about it?
So what I can't do is really talk about individual salaries, and I can't talk about collective bargaining and how it applies to an individual. When we bargain with an association, we are talking about an entire unit. We have many administrative assistants who work in many of our schools, and there are obviously many custodians, many paraprofessionals, many food service workers. And so really to address the impact of this on one individual is not fair, nor is it something that we're able to comment on. Keep in mind, it takes 2 parties to negotiate a contract. So when we sit down, we're not talking about individuals, we're talking about group overall movement that we need to make.
I understand that you don't like to answer these questions. It's very common. We're used to this now. Proper process would be to go to your union rep, which she did, and one of the union reps told her, you make enough money already. So she went to HR, and HR told her, if you're not happy, you should quit. Now, if you sit up here and you're talking about how you want to keep people long-term, how can you justify these kind of responses when somebody brings something up?
The rationale, I could just add that, you know, really the rationale for bringing down from 3 tiers to 2 was that the admins, their duties were equal within the offices.
They're not.
But each school utilizes them differently. So really the decisions were made for equity and for cross-training. And I do have to say that everybody in the bargaining unit was getting a raise.
And again, we can't get into personnel conversations between HR and an individual employee. That's really not a matter for deliberative session.
Okay, so at this point, Mr. Leary, you need to take a seat. We have to address other questions that we have, and then you can ask your questions after.
Okay. With their responses, I would just urge the townspeople to vote this contract down.
Any other questions or comments?
Kathy Snyder. I'm a para at
Could you please state your address?
21 Louise Drive, Litchfield. No, Mayflower. I don't know where I live anymore. I don't know where I live. I don't know where I work.
It's in the town, right?
Yeah, town for a lot of years. Everybody on the pay scale got a raise. When you hit the top of the scale, whether you're food service, admin assistants, para, there are no more steps, but you get your cost of living raise. So everybody in our bargaining unit did get a raise. I just wanted to clarify that, and, you know, we're all too old for the name calling. Let's get this done. Can we call the question?
Nope, we have somebody else.
Okay.
Ralph Baum, 6 Gibson Drive. Yeah, that's always been a problem when I've been on negotiating teams. What do you do with the employees at the very top? And sometimes you add to it, and I know it depends on who's negotiating the contract. And I remember sometimes negotiations from the union were only the high people, so to make sure but now it looks like we have an even. But yeah, it's always been a problem, but I think, yeah, it still needs, people on the top should still get a raise. Thank you.
It's definitely part of the balancing act, trying to address and help people out at all ends of the, you know. Yep, exactly.
Scott Taylor, 6 Lilac Court. If I could just ask that if there is a COLA increase for administrative assistants, the document on the website doesn't have that as a bullet point. I know it was brought up during one of the budget committee meetings, so if there is a COLA increase for that group, if that could just please be documented on the website. Thank you.
On the website, but this presentation did have it. It's on slide 26. Year 1, 0.25% COLA, and then year 2 and 3, there's a 1% COLA. Okay. Oh, sorry, or take it back. Here, I'll just show it real quick. There it is.
Okay, any further questions or comments pertaining to Article 4?
Did somebody say it's not on there? Oh, it's not on the printout. Oh, huh, okay. You can take a picture of that. And we'll get that fixed on the website then. Can I make a motion to restrict reconsideration?
No, not yet.
Not yet, all right.
So if there is no further questions or comments to Article 4, it will be presented on the warrant as written.
And I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration.
A motion and a second has been made to restrict reconsideration. Any questions or comments based on that? I see no one moving, so we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
All right.
That is Article 4. Now, Article 5, special meeting. Shall the Litchfield School District, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the Litchfield School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4 cost items only? Again, we have Ms. Hirschberger.
I won't go through everything that Heidi did. I think you understand what this is now, but we are asking, even if you don't support Article 4, that you please support this, so our support staff potentially don't go without a contract.
Questions or comments pertaining to Article 5? Seeing none, it will be on the warrant as written.
Okay, thank you.
Now to Article 6. This one ought to be a quick one. Middle school project. Shall the Litchfield School District authorize the school board to enter into a 20-year municipal lease agreement in the amount of $5,066,140 for the purpose of funding the Litchfield Middle School project, including but not limited to building renovations, heating and ventilation, lighting and controls, and renewable energy, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $195,000 for the first year's payment for that purpose. This lease agreement contains an escape clause, so the majority vote is required on this. The estimated tax impact is approximately 16 cents per thousand, and for this we have Dr. Jetty speaking on behalf of the school board.
Excellent, thank you. So I want to talk for a second. We've been doing a lot of work looking at our school buildings. There was a lot of delayed maintenance that had occurred over time, both actually at all 3 schools, but the high school being the newest building in the fleet. We were able to get that taken care of relative to some heating and ventilation concerns that we had here. We then turned our attention to both Griffin and to the middle school. I think it's no secret that the school board is very serious about trying to replace the Griffin Memorial School, and we'll talk further about that on the warrant. But the most pressing need that we had is that if we had taken that step and we continued to have delayed maintenance at the middle school, that we would end up with another building that would need further attention down the road. So we quickly assembled a team of experts to help us figure out what we needed to do to get the middle school prepared to last another 35 to 40 years. It's 35 years old. Systems start to fail at that point, and we wanted to make sure that we had a good plan going forward. A few people I just want to acknowledge in the room. So David Ely is an architect that we have contracted with. And David has an excellent design team behind him who is helping us to determine what steps we need to make going forward. Corey Isbicki and I, Brian Burke is a board member, we've all been invested for well over a year. And Dick Henry is another energy consultant who is on our team. Dick is not here today. But together we've identified what we need to do to make progress at the middle school. Phase 1 is the work that we completed last summer. And basically, we figured out how to replace the roof on the building. The roof was at the end of useful life, and we needed to make sure that we had buttoned up a solid envelope at the school. Part of buttoning up the solid envelope also involved replacing all the windows in the school. The windows were 35 years old. In many cases, the seal in between the two panes of glass had failed. They were both cloudy and you couldn't see out them, and they were no longer efficient. They needed to be replaced. We also identified an HVAC unit in the front office area, and this is the center core. So we're talking about a part of the building where there are no windows. The only way you can get fresh air in is through the HVAC unit, and that was replaced. It covered the teacher's room, the nurse's office. That was critical in the middle of COVID, that we had good fresh air coming into the nurse's office. So that unit was replaced in phase 1. We also reconfigured the office and the conference room and the guidance area. That allowed us to have a conference room that was accessible to students and to parents. And we also did a limited install of efficient LED lighting because we wanted to test out how the LED lighting would work in the building. All of that work was done for a total of $1.4 million, 100% paid for through the use of grants and other funding sources. So we asked the town for help with impact fees. We used some of the federal funds that we received relative to COVID. We also did use the fund balance, as Member Douglas had pointed out, because it was money that we had, and these were critical projects that we needed to get accomplished. So there was no additional ask of the taxpayers. We found a way to make all of that work happen within the means that we had already at our disposal. So now we're looking at a choice, and the choice is we're either going to have to make some major repairs to the middle school, and those major repairs will have significant costs for the taxpayers, or we can make upgrades, and those upgrades will result in reduced costs and savings over time. Another key member of our team that I didn't introduce earlier is Dave Ross. Dave is our facilities director, and he's sitting here. Dave, stand up, because you got to put your hands up in the air again, because you're looking at the control units. You are looking at the control units at the Litchfield Middle School. When somebody's hot, Dave turns a knob. When somebody's cold, he bangs on a thing. That's how we're able to get things done at the middle school right now. The systems have failed miserably, and we have to get them replaced. And so Dave also, I can speak for him, I'm sure, is very excited that we're making this kind of proposal today so that he can get back to managing the buildings the way he should be and not doing the day-to-day off and ons that are necessary currently. So what is required to be done? Basically, it's a 1987 building. There are 2 oil-fired burners that are in there, boilers that are in there, and they are in the process of failing. They've been kept together for 35 years. There have been some issues with them, but they are at end of useful life and need to be replaced. And there's a lot of money that it will cost to replace 2 oil boilers. We saw this coming. We put it into the capital improvement plan. If you look at the town of Litchfield's capital improvement plan as approved by the CIP committee, this was a known expense that we were going to have to face. We also have learned that the underground oil tank, which has been in the ground since 1987, is not going to pass its next inspection. It is on its last leg. That's going to have to be dug up and replaced with a new underground oil tank if we choose to go that route. The heating and ventilation systems are failed or are failing. Dave literally is walking into the middle of a class, the teacher's trying to teach, and he's taking a unit apart in order to try to repair it and to keep it going. That's real, it's happening. We've identified in studying the building that there's poor insulation in places. Overall, the building's not bad. The roof is pretty good, the walls are pretty good, but there is a gap that we identified where it just never got properly sealed up and needs to be sealed up in order to achieve the most solid envelope that we can. We also have a slab that is exposed and is resulting in cold floors and causing other issues. So that's another thing that we need to address. And the last thing to mention is that in the capital improvement plan, the kitchen, if you've been in the kitchen at the middle school, it is way undersized. It is not laid out properly. The equipment is not adequate for the food service that we're looking to deliver, and that also needs to be upgraded and was included in that CIP. You're looking at $4.1 million worth of expense when you add all that up. And these aren't nice to haves, these are need to be dones, right? We need to have a boiler, we need to have heat, we need to have ventilation. This is stuff that has to be accomplished in the immediate future. What we're proposing is to spend about $5 million. About $5 million, a little more than the 4.1, but here's how we intend to spend it and what we hope to accomplish. $2.3 million will be invested into the HVAC system. We all learned in the middle of an airborne pandemic that having fresh air was critical. And it doesn't matter if we're coming out of the airborne pandemic, we still have cold and flu season each year, and of course there could be some other airborne illness coming down the road. So we want to position that building to be ready for the future. We want to put a solar array on the roof so that we can break the tie of the fossil fuels and produce the energy ourselves. For $910,000 investment, we can produce the energy and get out of the business of buying oil on a volatile, fluctuating market, not buying electricity from Eversource. Everybody get their recent bill? It went up. It went up because Eversource has increased rates significantly. They've done it to us also. They've done it to you as taxpayers. And so we want to get out of that and break that cycle by investing in a solar array. If you haven't been in the middle school locker rooms, you should. It's wasted space. The building was built with, a gang shower for the boys and girls. It is not used. Students today and students in the next 20 years are not going to be undressing and using a gang shower. That's just the reality of it. So it's wasted space that we currently have. So our goal is to take those locker rooms and convert them into usable, flexible classroom space. In the master plan, we had that we were going to spend $1.2 million adding onto the middle school. We don't need to add on to the middle school. We can take wasted space within the middle school, turn it into useful space, and do it for half the price. It's a smart way to proceed with the money. We want to do lighting and electric upgrades so that we can also capitalize on energy cost reductions from highly efficient LEDs throughout the building. We want to do the kitchen upgrades so we have the kitchen, the material, the cooking surfaces, and the space we need in order to deliver the lunches that our students are learning to appreciate. And finally, we want to improve the insulation and make sure the envelope to the building is solid and buttoned up. This shows you that expenditure of about $5 million. So the board's plan to the voters is to replace the oil heat with air source heat pumps that are powered by the solar array. They're electric air source heat pumps. The energy will be provided to us from the sun. That conversion will help save money in the short term and the long term. We also want to implement energy efficiency upgrades and use the savings that are in our operating budget in order to accomplish the planned capital improvements, the kitchen renovation and also conversion of the PE locker rooms into the new classrooms. And remember, this is a total alignment with the capital improvement plan. This is stuff that we've identified and that the CIP committee has recommended and is in the plan. If you vote yes on Article 6, we will end up with a healthier learning space. We will end up with better ventilation. We will end up with high efficiency heat pumps providing that ventilation. We'll have the solar power system. We will renovate our kitchen to the current standards. 2 new classrooms out of the PE locker room wasted space. The cost is the $5 million and grant support can be leveraged to help. And finally, there will be lower stabilized energy costs for the next 30 years because we'll be out of the fossil fuel market and we will be able to predict exactly what our energy costs are. If we vote no on Article 6, here's what it means. We have to replace the oil heat system. That means the boilers and repair piping throughout the entire building. We have to replace the underground oil tank. It's got to come out. It's got to be replaced. Replace ventilation equipment throughout the building. We still have to get Dave out of the business of being the controls by hand, right? So we have to get that stuff upgraded. We will have to find out how to renovate the kitchen. We will have to defer the new classroom space that we need. You know, the parents at the middle school demanded that the portables be removed. We accomplished that. We got rid of the portables. We pulled people inside the building. It's tight inside the building, but it's safer having all the students inside the building. We don't have fifth graders running back and forth across the parking lot to use the bathroom. We want to make sure that we're inside and in a safe environment. We accomplished that. We just need a little more space. 2 flexible classrooms will help. It's going to cost $4.1 million to do the work that we need to do anyway. And the energy costs that we will be locked into, because once we put a new oil tank in the ground and once we have a new oil-fired burner, we're locked in for 20 or 30 years purchasing fossil fuels and buying those on a volatile market. So every year we'll be facing unknown cost volatility. This shows how it is that we can squeeze out the $3.9 million in savings. The bottom line is the cost of voting yes, predictable costs going forward. The top red line is the cost of voting no, and the error bars that are on there are based upon a 11% average increase in the price of oil and a 2% average increase in the cost of electricity. So when you project that out over time, you end up with really a widely unknown. The point is, by year 20 of this project, you're going to be spending somewhere between 9 million and 15 million on those materials versus stabilizing it and producing the savings, keeping it in the taxpayer's pocket. So we're looking for stability, not being subjected to those energy price fluctuations, adding the extra space, having the healthier environment, and extending the life of LMS to last for another 30 years. If we were to replace LMS at current costs, so you can do roughly $400 per square foot times the number of square feet in the building, it would be a $37 million school to build a new LMS. But we don't need to build a new LMS. We have a pretty solid building that needs some buttoning up and some tightening up, and this project will allow us to do that so that we can get that extra future out of it. So what's the impact on taxpayers? It is a $5 million municipal lease, roughly, and it will be for 20 years at, we're predicting 2.5% interest. Anybody who's looked at the current projections, the feds have indicated that they're going to be increasing interest rates several times over the next year. And so even though we're talking with banks now about this to prepare for this, if it passes, the banks are a little bit unsure because they don't know what they're facing relative to increases. But we feel confident that a 2.5% interest rate is something that we'll be able to obtain. The impact of that will be 16 cents per thousand for the taxpayers. So if you have a home assessed at $400,000, it will result in an additional tax bill of $64 a year. At that, I do have some additional slides and so forth, but I think I've covered the bulk of the project, and I'd be happy to take questions that people have, and the Daves are ready to help out as needed.
Okay. So at this point, I'll ask for questions or comments pertaining to Article 6.
Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive, also state rep. One of the things we did this summer was spend a lot of meetings with DOE, Department of Education, on money. And they have a lot of money, federal money, to dole out, and including ARPA money. Have we exhausted all the ways of getting that money? I know there's a lot for ventilation, and have we exhausted all those remedies?
No, we haven't even started to use the grant money. So folded into all of the cost comparisons, Ralph, it includes the ESSER funds that we've been able to obtain. So we have those monies in reserve. We have written into the grant that we intend to use them for the ventilation projects at the middle school. And so that is helping to bring the cost down also for the taxpayer. As you know, with ESSER funds, 20% of the money needed to be reserved out for learning gaps. So we've parked that money to also address other programmatic concerns, but the money, the 80% that we're able to tap into is earmarked toward this project.
Okay, good, thank you. Also, for future buildings, we got a bill going, it should become law for building aid based on the Department of Education will assess infrastructure-wise, all the schools in the state to come up with a metric for doing future building aid. Just want to let you know about that. So everybody will be assessed the same. So when you apply for building aid, it will be based on what that assessment was. So
Ralph,
just for the
anything you
future.
can do to help us, we're going to get to Articles 7 and 8 in a little bit and talk about our needs at the elementary level. We need your help and support in the legislature. Thank you.
Yeah, John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive. I was just wondering, did the Board of Selectmen just recently release some impact fees for the ventilation and stuff? Did they do that? They did that?
That is correct. So we asked for.
And
the
how
Board-
much was that?
The Board of Selectmen, Corey, if you can get 188, and that was at the middle school. There's also 329 in impact fees at the high school. We've asked for that. We actually asked for that for ventilation work at the high school. We intend to use that for a lighting upgrade here at the high school. So, but the impact fees are helping us to streamline and save costs down the road.
But they didn't release any funds for the solar panels, is that correct? Or?
We didn't ask for funds for the solar panels.
Okay.
The solar panels are going to be purchased as part of a power purchase agreement, and so we will be paying that back over time for the power that we receive from those.
Does this $5 million, do you have a contingency fund for in case of cost overruns?
Can you ask me that one more time?
Do you have any money in contingency for cost overruns for the project? For this
So
project?
what we've done for this project is we contracted with North Branch Construction as a construction manager. So they're working for us. They are working with all the suppliers who are bidding on the project, all the subcontractors. They receive all of those bids. They have a contingency built into the ask. So yes, there is a contingency. I don't know the percentage. Corey, do you know it?
And my last question is, can you talk about the lease agreement escape clause?
I'm actually going to ask our attorney if he's comfortable talking about the escape clause. And in fairness, Mike is here representing the law firm today, but we've met with Diane Goro, who we also is in the same law firm. And Diane has indicated to the board and to us that these are very routine lease agreements, that escape clauses are all included in those, and that there's nothing unusual about this. So she perceived that to be kind of a standard way of doing business.
Yeah, the wording of the warrant article is what the State Department of Revenue Administration wants, and they include that sentence about an escape clause. The escape clause in legal terms is a fiscal funding clause. What that means is each year, voters will have the opportunity, either through their vote on the budget article or perhaps through a separate warrant article, to vote whether to continue funding this or not. If the voters were to vote not to continue funding it, then at that point the district could escape from the lease arrangement and stop paying.
And how much would that cost the district? Do we know? Or
You're asking how much it would cost to do what?
for the escape clause, would there be any cost to the project? Or?
Well, I can't speak to cost details, but the point of it is that at the end of the fiscal year that this was last approved by voters, you would stop paying under the lease arrangement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Chris Claridi, 10 Nomkeek. If I can hit that, I think I know what you were asking, which is that if you do the escape clause, you actually return the equipment you purchased. We no longer keep it. It's like if you lease your car, but there's a clause where you can say, take it back, I don't want it anymore.
And if I may just take that one step further, think about the impact of that. You're leasing heating and ventilation equipment. So now the company comes and takes the heating and ventilation equipment, right? And so now we have to provide heating and ventilation in a school. So typically, although the escape clause is written in, it's not comparable to a car. Well, I guess you'd be in trouble if you couldn't drive, but it is a little bit different in this case. So we're really looking for the voters to make this switch, and then obviously the payment back on that is in lieu of buying fossil fuels and in lieu of buying electricity at market rate from Eversource. So,
Excuse me. Could you just restate your name and address for the record? We didn't catch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I lowered it for my short legs. Chris Claridi, 10 Nomkeek Court.
Thank you.
So first I want to thank everyone who's put all your time. It's apparent you guys are all well vested in this. You've been working on it for a long time. There's a lot of needs at the middle school. We walked around, I saw them. We need boilers. We definitely need ventilation in the old section, probably the newer quote unquote section also. What I'm afraid of is that you have been directed through your hired consultants down a path that we should not have went. So the systems that you're proposing are not implemented for sole heating purpose in New Hampshire anywhere for schools. Maybe for residences, not for schools. When I brought this up in the last meeting, there was a couple other schools talked about Oyster River, which is a new net zero building that they're doing. I'm in the industry. I called the design engineer. That system is a geothermal heat pump system. That is not equivalent to our system. Another building that got brought up was Hollis Elementary School. I looked at the plans for that system. That system has a gas-fired burner, gas-fired boiler in it. That is not equivalent to our system. So I asked at our last meeting, what schools is everyone saying, this is a proven technology? These customers that we know, because we designed it and we installed it, are happy with this system inside their building. I do not want to be the guinea pig. Technology fads come and go all the time. In the last meeting, I listed many of them. I've seen it come and go, just like we had electric heat in all the schools in the 70s, and then they tore it out and they put in boilers, and then they put chilled beam systems in. There's one over in Rochester. They still fight with it today. They paid good money for a bad building. I have written recommendations not to do this project from at least 2 districts who have air source heat pumps and hot water, and they still have issues. One of them is Spalding. They had a big blizzard. We got a little bit of it, but over in Rochester, they got it worse. Their heat pump system got filled with snow, burnt out 1 board and 1 compressor, and it took out heat to 6 classrooms. Those classrooms do not have heat until they get those parts in 2 to 3 weeks. Now, with boiler systems, there's a lot more redundancy. There's a lot less one-part failure that can take down this whole system. With geothermal systems, there's a lot more redundancy. My concern is that we're going down a path, and I understand everyone's invested, and you guys have probably looked at all these other options, but it's unfortunate that this didn't come up.
So to respond to that, Chris, and thank you, because I do appreciate that you took the tour the other day and that your acknowledgement that the systems are in need of repair. Like, we have to take some action. I do appreciate that you agree on that. I picked up the phone and I called the superintendent in Hollis. And I talked to Andy Corey, and I said, Andy, how has this worked out for you? And he says, it's been amazing. The reduction in energy prices has been very helpful. He said, in fact, it's been so successful in Hollis. And remember, Hollis is a fairly conservative community not too far from here. So we're not talking about finding some example outside of New Hampshire. And he said it was so popular that their budget committee, so this is interesting, their budget committee actually said, we want to do more of that. We want to add a warrant article to continue that same tract at another school in the system. And so it was the budget committee that saw the benefits of this, and they were skeptical at first, but when they saw the actual results, they surprised the superintendent and said, why isn't there a warrant article to expand that and to do it more often, right? So that's been the experience that Andy shared with me. We also asked for a list of schools, and you can see it here on the slide, who have implemented these heat pumps successfully in northern New England and Massachusetts, where the weather's just as bad. And you can see that there are plenty of examples that are on this list. The
Those
other
are
thing
not
I
the
would
same
do is
systems,
just
sir.
ask if Dave Ely, who is our architect and a key member of this design team, but Dave also has done the work at Hollis and at Hollis Montessori School. And Dave, is there anything you want to add that I didn't hit on that
If I can
response?
interrupt you for 1 second.
Yep.
Hollis has a boiler.
No, I hear you.
You don't have a boiler. You're talking, that's where I have an issue. You're removing our boilers. You can't do that. There's no school on that list, correct me if I'm wrong, that is air source only. Maybe the Montessori School, which is residential construction and brand new construction.
Dave?
Thank you, Mike. David Ely, architect with Windy Hill Associates. The Hollis Primary School still has 19 classrooms that are on a boiler. In fact, we upgraded that boiler to propane last year or the year before, last year. It is the plan to take those remaining 19 classrooms and put them on air source heat pumps because the other classrooms are being so successful. The Hollis Montessori School, I don't know why you say it's residential construction, maybe because it's a wood frame building, but it's not residential construction. It's designed as a school. And it is 100% air source heat pumps with no backup at all. What else can I say?
So basically, there's one wood frame construction building that was brand new.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
There's one brand new wood framed construction school that's air source heat pumps. So are any of these others block construction, typical to our school, that are 100% air source with no boilers?
Well, this list, I'm not familiar with every school on this list, but I am familiar with the Plainfield School, and that school has been converted to 100% air source heat pumps from, I believe it was a boiler system, an oil-fired boiler system, and that was done as an example about 4 or 5 years ago. They first took 2 or 3 classrooms as a test case and made them air source heat pumps, and then that worked out so well that they did the rest of the school the same way. So they're 100% air source heat pumps without backup heat. The rest of these schools, I can't speak to them because I didn't put this list together, but my mechanical consultant did, and I have faith in the fact that he did a good job putting that list together and gave us schools that are, in fact, air source heat pump schools.
Well, air source heat pumps with no boilers.
I don't know.
Well, that's the difference. Is not that you don't know that air source heat pumps alone is different than air source heat pumps with boilers.
Correct.
I have customers who are unhappy with air source heat pumps and they still have boilers. It really scares me that we're talking about ripping out all our piping, all our existing fin tube radiation, all that infrastructure of hot water system, and then putting all our eggs in one basket because there is 1, maybe 2 schools in the state who have done this. To me, it's still in test mode.
Okay, on that, we have other questions.
Well, Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. I have a comment as a citizen, and then I actually have a comment in a bit as a budget committee member. My comment as a citizen is, in doing the quick math, 195,000 times 20 still lands you $1 million short. So, how much is this going to cost in year 2, 3, 4 through 20? Because that's not indicated anywhere on this document.
I want to make sure I understand the question. You're saying that the 195, the additional raise and appropriate amount.
Yep, times 20 is 3.9 million. You're telling me it's at least 5 million. Where's the additional million?
Yeah, so the rest of the money is in the energy savings. So we currently are spending $90,000 toward oil. We will no longer be doing that. That money does not need to be raised or appropriated because it's already in the operating budget, but it will also be used to apply toward the lease. The lease amount, the 195 is the highest amount. That actually declines. I mean, you've seen this with leases, they decline over time. And so that will also decline each year of the municipal lease.
So you still need to raise and appropriate it, but what you're saying is you're not also raising and appropriating for energy, because this doesn't come out of thin air. You're just moving it from one bucket to another bucket. But
It's raised and appropriated in Article 1. It's embedded in
right,
Article
but in
1, the
year
budget.
2, you need 250,000. So what you're saying is 195 from year 1 plus, well, we're already going to spend 60,000, so we're not counting that. I think the taxpayers have a right to know how much this is going to cost, because if you do the quick math like I did, it looks like not everything's being put out there in the open. So sure, if you want to say $250 per year plus $60,000 savings, sure, you can absolutely put that in there. But anybody who does the math is going to come up short and wonder why.
So I've tried to answer the question. I'm going to explain it again. There is the $195,000 in additional to pay back toward the municipal lease. Plus, we're not buying oil, and we won't be buying electricity. Corey, do you have those exact amounts? I know it's 89,000 plus. These are operating costs, right? We have to pay for the electricity. We have to pay for the oil now. We won't be doing that. That money will be going toward the lease. So the lease payment is the sum total of those, but then it will continue to decline over time, and the other money is already in the operating budget. So it will add up to over $5 million because we will pay back the $5 million that we borrow, and we will also have the interest payments at 2.5%. So I can assure you the payments will come a combination of what's cost avoidance and not buying oil and electricity, plus the additional that we're raising. So $113,000 in savings in year 1 is already in the budget. The other thing I think it's really important the public understand, Campbell High School, we wrote a grant. We received $80,000. It was approved by Governor and Council a few weeks ago. The $80,000 will replace all the lighting in Campbell High School. When we go from inefficient T8s to efficient LEDs, we will save about $70,000 next year. That money's in the operating budget because we didn't know that we were going to get this grant or be able to do this. So between taking the impact fee money, the grant money from the state, it's actually federal money, replacing the lighting, we'll end up with a better quality lighting throughout Campbell High School and save $70,000. That money can also be used toward future improvements to our schools. We're headed in the right direction. We're reducing long-term costs, upgrading, and doing it without asking for additional tax dollars aside from what's in this warrant.
All right, second question. There was a discussion about meeting with contractors prior to this meeting in the hopes of sharpening our pencils. Have we been able to do that to know whether or not the prices are coming in under or over?
So it's an excellent question because when we wrote the warrant article, and if you look back to the first slide, it said as proposed. At the end of questions and answers, the board, I believe, is going to make a motion to reduce the amount that we're asking for because we've done exactly that. We've been sharpening our pencils. North Branch has been working hard on our behalf to get bid amounts in. And so our goal is to ask you today to reduce this article so that we can put a lower amount in front of the taxpayers when you vote on March 8th. So yes, we've been working really hard and have produced some savings.
So why not share that number now since we're already talking about the budget? We're talking the numbers. Why not
It'll
just
be,
tell us?
we're gonna ask you to reduce it to $4,950,000.
Thank you.
So that's the reduction. It's not a secret, but I want to make sure you understand the project, and I've answered those questions first.
Oh, I'm going to have comments about understanding the project in just a moment. Thank you.
Okay. You're up.
Steve Gannon, 12 Nesson-Keg Drive. I have two questions around the solar. One is how old is the roof on LMS, and can it sustain a solar panel that should be up there for 20 to 30 years, or we're gonna have to pull them up and replace the roof. The second one is, you mentioned we're gonna go to solar and we're gonna reduce using electricity. Is there gonna be battery storage? Because if the sun's not out, you're not gonna produce solar at night and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, so excellent question. I want to make sure, the first question was about the roof.
Yeah, how old is the roof and will it sustain?
So in phase one this summer, we replaced the roof. That carries a 30-year warranty. We went with a white roofing. The reason for white is that it reflects the sun. It doesn't get hot. And so the panel that is going to go on top of that roof, and there will be no penetrations from the panels. They will be ballasted with sandbags on racks that are on top of the roof, okay? And they are what are called bifacial panels. So they not only produce electricity from the top part, but they produce electricity from the back side. So any light that is reflected off the roof surface will come into the back of those panels and will produce additional electricity for us. And again, no penetration. So we're really in good shape there by doing this. We use the grant money, by the way, to buy a thicker membrane so that we could get the 30-year warranty out of it. So we really have set that up for success. Your second question was?
Storage.
Storage. So on our team, we have a consultant also named Kay Aiken. Kay is working on an energy storage system. There will be, and interestingly enough, it's not batteries, it's a capacitor-based energy storage system that will store energy up during the day, and when the sun goes down at night and there's a basketball game, it'll allow us to continue to run the school. And the way this operates is when our demand is lowest, which is summer when school is not open, the demand is lowest at that point in time, so we actually will be selling electricity back to the grid. So in the winter, you have a day like yesterday, you're right, we're going to have to draw electricity off the grid, but the goal is to have this be as close to net zero as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
3 points of interest. First off, an article like this really, Bob Leary, 172 Charles Bancroft. An article like this with this price tag, we felt really needed to be on a bond, and it's not. We feel like that's, well, I feel like that's a very egregious mistake on the school's part. Secondly, you have $700,000 in electrical costs built into the pie chart that you submitted us. So you are still drawing electricity. Is that added to the cost? And the third thing is, which is the white elephant in the room, is the batteries, which most of the time are about a 6 to 8 year lifespan. And to replace them would be about $300,000. You could replace them conceivably 3 times throughout the run of this project. So you have to account for those costs as well. So it's really not a $5 million project.
So just to respond to the 3 points, municipal leasing is a tried and tested way of getting upgrades done to school buildings. School districts have done it throughout the state. The town has done it to get equipment. I mean, the municipal leasing is not new to the town of Litchfield.
Not $5 million.
And we have placed this on the ballot so that the voters, again, to be clear and transparent with everybody, this question is in front of you, so voters are going to be weighing in on it. Bob, as I said earlier, there are no batteries. This is a capacitor system, and capacitors are not the same as batteries. They do not lose their ability to retain that charge over time. So our experts are telling us there's not that long-term cost to come. So please, you know, somebody had asked us the question about, I saw the Tesla catch on fire. Teslas are not driving on capacitors. You can't compare what you see relative to battery systems to the system that we're designing and installing.
Just to add to that about the battery system, not the battery system, but it's a capacitor system, and a lithium-ion battery does have a life to it. The capacitor system is a solid-state system, so it should last a lot longer. Beyond that, if the system fails, it doesn't have to be replaced totally. There are modules in that battery which can be replaced individually. So it's a maintenance issue, possibly, but to date, we don't know exactly how long it's going to last. We anticipate that it should last at least 30 years.
And how much to replace them when it's time?
I don't know that, I'm sorry.
Pete Salidas, 31 Pearson Street. So you're giving us a price right now everyone knows the supply chain is out of control. I mean, I work in an industry where we represent a lot of companies, and we're submitting price increases constantly. So right now it's what, 5 million, I think you said?
Roughly.
Roughly. That can increase 500,000. So if we're working at today's numbers, what are we gonna do? What's the plan down the line?
So by working with the construction management firm, these are guaranteed maximum prices. So what we hope is that it will actually come in less when we go to purchase, but that's why they built that contingency in, and they've asked their subs, and I can't even imagine what it's like being a subcontractor right now, making that prediction. I will tell you, the original thought was that this would be a 5-month project, and we've expanded it to 8 to 9 months. It's almost like having a baby. And the reason is because of the supply chain issues. So we are predicting that the project will elongate a little bit because of that, but the price is a guaranteed maximum, if I have that correct, Dave. I think so, yeah.
So then with the savings, we're hearing savings on lighting, on heating, are those going to be taken out of the budget, the school budget? Because it's kind of like my wife coming back from TJ Maxx and spending $200, but she tells me she saved 50.
Your wife does that too? So the answer is that those are operating costs that we currently have. If we do nothing, we still have those operating costs. So we predict that they will have to remain in the budget, but they're going to stabilize. So we're not going to be taking that electric or that oil amount, which adds up to 116, 140 is the number Corey gave me. We're not going to have to be increasing that for inflation each year, because once the panels are on the roof and working for us, we know what the cost is. It's fixed at that point.
So that money that was in the operating budget for that is going to roll out?
It
or
will
is
roll,
that getting earmarked for something else?
It will roll out, and the question is, when does everything get paid off, right? So year 20, if you and I are still here, at that point in time, it would roll out or be used for some other.
So the savings are being used to pay down the...
That goes back to the question that Carrie asked about, if you only pay back 195, you're generating $3 million. The savings are generating the rest of the money to accomplish all the upgrades and improvements.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question.
Scott Taylor, 6 Lilac Court. Just wanted to make a comment in regards to the slide about the historical heating oil cost increases that are referenced by macrotrends.net, showing an 11.4% increase over the last 20 years. When I went ahead and took a look at another department, the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which is part of the Energy Department, they're actually showing that it's only a 9.9% increase in terms of specifically New England heating oil prices over the last 20 years. So obviously that would, if these numbers are correct specific to New England, I'm not sure as far as macro trends, what they're pulling from, could have a negative impact in terms of the savings as well, if it's only a 9.9% increase versus an 11.4% increase.
Well, again, with my wife, I remind her 9.9 is 10 and 11, so we're only off by 1%.
On a $5 million project overall, though, that is considerable.
Totally understood, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Carrie Douglas, I'm going to speak as a budget committee member since I don't feel like knocking you off the podium over there. I voted no on this project, and that's not at all representative of the fact that I think that my opinions on the actual quality of the proposal. Is the work necessary? Most likely. The problem I had, well, there were several, is I don't know enough about the project. The team was developing it for 2 years. I saw information a couple days before the vote. I have not had time to have all of my questions answered. To your point about how much research has been done, I didn't have time. I had not enough information. A project of this size requires a lot more time to figure out, is this the right course of action? Are we making the right choices? This is a big commitment, and as such, it requires and it deserves a lot of attention and attention to detail. I had asked Dr. Jetty about the contingency. Where's the owner's contingency? He said we'd use fund balance, I believe, was his answer. And then today we mentioned using contractor contingency. As a former construction project manager, I would never have been able to use my contractor contingency as an owner contingency. They're two different things. They're two. You need your contingency. The contractors get theirs. That's for them to use for cost overruns and other things. You can argue about it in meetings as to what should be a contingency, what should be a change order, but that's not money for the owner to spend. Secondly, GMP, how long is it guaranteed for? Because with the current costs right now, I'd be surprised if you got anything guaranteed more than 21 days. By the time this gets approved, those GMPs are gone. Second, another thing on GMP, is it a cost savings? Or does the contractor get to keep the, if he comes under, or does he have any incentive to come under? That's the benefit of splitting the savings. The owner gets a share, the contractor's incentivized to bring it down because he gets a share. What's the deal? I don't know. There's just too many questions for me as a budget committee member to be able to recommend this project. More time is needed. Is this the right answer? I don't know. And I also agree with Mr. Leary. Should have been a bond. Yes, we do lease purchases in town. We lease purchase cars for the police. We lease purchase equipment that's maybe 5 years. Everything that's come in under this, well, even the antenna was 5 years. This is 20 years. This is bond territory. I understand it's concerning, it's nervous, it's a supermajority. But if you want the people in this room to know that the community stands behind you, then get your supermajority, get your bond.
Okay. Further questions?
Chris Claridi, 10 Nomkey Court. So I wanted to just bring up one other thing I had suggested before, which is that when we add ESSER funds into construction projects, the entire project has to follow certain rules. Some of those rules include Davis-Bacon wages. So in Hillsborough County, electricians, like the people work for my company, we have to pay them, it looks like it's about $54 an hour. Doesn't matter, based on their experience, that's their compensation. So if we have about $500,000 in ESSER funds you were gonna put in here, why don't we do the locker room renovation as a separate project so that we don't have to pay that for the whole project? Yes, it is. It is called adding square footage so you can further social distance. Did you know that Rochester is building a brand new school with their ESSER funds? So that, I'm telling you, it will qualify. I can get you in the room with the right people who can tell you how it can qualify.
Chris, we do appreciate the suggestion. Again, we've talked to our construction manager. They've assured us that the wages that Davis-Bacon requires are already met or exceeded in Hillsborough County. And to Corey's point, the advice we got was that it was not an allowable expense, but we can look further at it.
Yeah, it is. I'm positive it is.
I can just tell you that our grant manager, Mary Widman, is here, and the state has been incredibly strict and given a lot of scrutiny to items that we've put in. So it's a little bit cumbersome, but we have to follow all the complex regulations. Trust me, if we could do it, we would definitely do, we're doing our best to deliver this in a responsible way for the taxpayers, and so we are looking at that.
But, so I'm gonna just say one thing about what you said. Your construction manager said that every electrician in the state already makes $57 an hour or more.
That's not what he said.
You said it's comparable to that.
What he said is that the wages in our region, southern Hillsborough County, meet or exceed Davis-Bacon.
That means an electrician. So the Davis-Bacon rate is $57. Is there any electricians in here today?
Well,
No?
in the interest of keeping this moving along and staying within what is presented, we'll go to another question.
I read the paperwork that you guys, that the school board submitted, and I went to the Tuesday walkthrough at the Litchfield Middle School, And I want to say there's no doubt in my mind that this project has to get done. I want to express my appreciation to the school board for coming up with the municipal lease agreement, because that would get the work done in a timely manner. And I hope everyone supports the board in this project. Thank you.
Next question.
My name is Kate Stevens. I'm speaking as a Budget Committee member. And originally, when we were brought this project, we did not have a lot of information on it. So when we were originally voting, I had to vote no to not support this project because there were too many unanswered questions. They mention multiple times that it is in our capital improvement plan. That capital improvement plan for the town is brought up and worked on together with a member of the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, School Board, Town Administrator, and it's all of those groups working together to move the entire town forward. The other reason why I couldn't support it was the cost of it was 3 times the cost in that capital improvement plan. So sure, it's on the plan, but it was estimated at 1/3 of the cost of this project. Now that I understand that the electricity savings are guaranteed by the designer, it brings that cost much closer to where the capital improvement plan cost was expected to be, including the renovations to the LMS kitchen. So I just wanted to say that in my original vote, I could not support this, but after the further information and my tens of questions have been answered, I think I can support this project now.
Another question, comment?
Hi, John Davidson, 169 Charles Bancroft. A question, I guess, for Dr. Jetty or the school board. Should this article fail, the $4+ million that was referenced that's needed for the burners, the oil drums, where does that money come from to do that work?
So, quite honestly, that's not incorporated anywhere. So we would have to come up with contingency plan to either bond that work. So you would be bonding that amount of work anyway, and then buying the oil, right? So all those things would have to continue. It could present an emergency situation if, Dave Ross, where'd Dave go? Is he okay? My God, I can't have our controls guy not in the room. So I'm nervous, Dave. You got to stay healthy, man, because you keep it going over there for us. That's the problem that we have, right? Is that we need to make sure that we have something going forward. It could be an emergency meeting situation in order to come up with funding. And, when a boiler blows out, you're replacing that pretty quickly. It's really, that would not be good. We need this to pass. We need this project to plug ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna,
Looks like we have maybe one last comment, question.
Yeah, John Latch, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield. I was just wondering, did you say previously that you were in a power purchase agreement as far as the solar panels? Okay, just one. And how much is the cost of the solar panels?
Ask again.
How much is the cost of the solar panels?
So the solar panels are going to cost $1.4 million. That's the solar panels and the energy storage system. They will be purchased by a utility firm. The utility firm, by purchasing those, is eligible for federal grant money that we're not eligible for. If we bought them outright ourselves, we can't apply as a municipality toward that federal grant money. The private firm can. They will then pay back their investment partly through that and partly through the payments that we make. In the end, we will spend $910,000, that was in the grid, $910,000 for $1.4 million worth of equipment. So again, it's a smart way for us to proceed, plus they're guaranteeing that it's meeting our energy needs.
Can I ask what the total was for expenses for electricity for LMS?
Ask it one more time.
The cost for LMS for the electricity and all that?
The electricity cost, Corey, I think is about $90,000, I believe.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Leanne Romano, 7 Country Lane. I just have a quick question.
This grant money, what exactly are the contingencies to receive it? What do we have to do to get this federal money? Or is it coming from somewhere else?
Nope, it's federal money that was passed as part of the COVID relief packages, and it's administered through the State Department of Education. So it's allocated to each school district using a formula. That's how we determined how much we got. The amount of money we got is obviously less than a Manchester would get. And then we have to follow all the regulations that go along with that. So
That right there is my concern. What exactly do we have to follow for COVID protocol? Do we have to do what, the federal government is saying to receive it, or can we make decisions as a community?
yeah, so every year we get federal money, and every year we sign a disclosure document that the board
It's a
reviews
little
with me.
different with the COVID, though.
Nope, this falls right under the same set of rules. So it's no different than Title I funding that we use for reading services, Title II funding for professional development.
If we accept it, we do whatever the federal government is telling us to do to accept it.
Well, it's for things like ventilation upgrades, right? So you can't turn around and say, we're gonna spend it by putting in a football field. You
Right,
can't do that,
right.
right? You have to
That
spend it
makes sense.
within the rules you're given, and then you have to follow all the regulations that we follow anyway for all the other federal grant money that we receive.
I think I know what your question is, Leanne. No, this is money that has already been basically awarded. We've applied for it. We know how much we're getting. It's not tied in any way to masking policies or vaccinations or anything like that.
Well,
this is just infrastructure. We're using it for infrastructure money.
So
from the
my
federal
concern is I've been to the State House like several times during this whole process. And I noticed that there's bills that are coming out that are actually saying, oh, do this, and that happens. And then they rewrite it and say, well, if that fails, what about we prohibit
No,
them or
this is-
exempt them or?
This is FSR 1, 2, and 3 fund, or actually 2 and 3 funds that we've already, that boat has sailed. So this
So-
is not new grants that we're applying for. This is established grants that we're slated to receive.
So where can we get like information on what's in that grant that we're accepting? Because it's great, I want grant money, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Not if it has,
No, and
So let me, in the public board meeting, we have the grant tool that we have to sign off on. The board chair signs it, I sign it. The board all reviews it annually. We'll get you a copy of that so you can see what those all are.
Awesome, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yes.
Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive. Just to follow up on that, the Department of Education is controlling that money. So they're doing all the rules and whatnot. So pretty much it's removing us from the federal. The DOE is taking care of it. And answer those questions. So the controls are with the Department of Education at the state level. So saving us from playing all those rule games. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Mr. Moderator?
Seeing no further questions or comments,
Never mind.
Article 6 will be on the warrant.
Nope. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I need to make an amendment. When do I do that?
Okay, go ahead.
Go now?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to amend Article 6 as follows. Shall the school district authorize the school board to enter into a 20-year municipal lease agreement in the amount of $4,950,000 for the purpose of funding Litchfield Middle School project, including but not limited to rebuilding renovation, heating and ventilation, lighting and controls, and renewable energy, and to further raise and appropriate the sum of $195,000 for the first year's payment for that purpose. This lease agreement contains an escape clause.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Questions or comments about the motion?
That is a reduction of $116,140 to the posted warrant. And the estimated tax impact remains the same, and the first year's payment remains the same because of, that doesn't get reduced over the term of the lease.
Okay. Questions or comments? Hearing none, I have it. I already have it. Thank you. So with that, we'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the amendment, please say no. The ayes have it. And now, we will see that warrant, Article 6, as amended on the town warrant. Here we go. Article 7. And for the record, I would just like to state that the town portion of deliberative is supposed to start at noon time. It will be immediately preceding this with approximately about a 15-minute break or so in between. Good. And so with that, we'll finish up our business here. So warrant
Mr. Moderator.
article. Go ahead. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. Do we have a second? And we have a second. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. We have restricted reconsideration. Now, can I do Article 7? I'll do it. Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund established in 2020 for the purpose of funding the study, planning, and cost of new construction or renovation of existing facilities in the Litchfield School District. This sum is to come from the June 30th unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year with no amount to be raised from taxation. This amount is consistent with the capital plan adopted by the town of Litchfield in September of 2020. Estimated tax impact is 0. Do we have questions or comments about Article 7?
So just if I may, Articles 7 and 8 are sort of coupled together. They're all about the work that we're doing relative to Griffin Memorial School. So we appreciate everybody's support of the last warrant article going forward in front of the voters to take care of the middle school. And now it's time for us to turn our attention to our needs for elementary education and at Griffin. So I'd like to introduce the architect that we have contracted with, Kyle Barker. And Kyle is going to walk everybody through a brief show explaining what we've done to get to this point, and then we will take it from there with the, how 7 and 8 sort of tie together. But the money we're asking you to put aside is coming out of the fund balance at the end of this year, and it's going to be utilized toward further design work at the elementary school. Kyle?
Thank you, Michael. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I just heard that, kind of running short, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but I just want people to understand that I'll be available for questions, and this isn't going to end here tonight. There's going to be a lot of work going over the next year, and we want to make sure that people have a chance to give us some feedback. I've heard a lot of good feedback already today, but there's going to be more opportunities coming forward. To start with, what the school board hired us on was a request to design a new elementary school on the location next to the Litchfield Middle School. Our process is a little different in that there's a few things that we like to do first. And so I'm going to go through what those things are and kind of give you a brief. Again, I'm going to go fairly quickly to respect your time, but also then tell you what was going to be happening in the next year and what that money that Michael just talked about is going to be for. So the first thing we like to do is to do an assessment of the existing building. Now, there's been a lot of studies in the past, and we're using a lot of that data in this report that we're doing. But it was important for us to understand how the building's being used and what the issues are. Make sure that we have a clear statement of need going forward after the study is done. We use different national standards and codes to do that study. So this isn't just issues that we've made up. It's things that are based on facts that we can point to. When we got done that, there's a few things that stood out that I want to just go through sort of the top deficiencies that we found in the existing building. The first is space needs. You can look at the portable classrooms and say those are temporary. Those are meant as being temporary. This is not permanent structure. And it shows that there's not enough space inside the existing building. The next thing is we look at a few of the spaces inside, like the gymnasium, and it's about half the size of what we would build for a new school. So there's a few of those things that we were able to look at for the size of the building and what it currently is versus what we would design if we're doing new, to understand, you know, where things aren't working well. Lastly, on the space, there's something I call functional obsolescence, and what that means is spaces that were designed for one purpose that are now being used for a different purpose and just don't work well. If you want an example of that, you look at the nurse's office, which is in the original shower rooms for the gymnasium. So like what Mike was saying about the middle school, those spaces just aren't being used anymore, and so it's being repurposed, but they're not being repurposed in a way that really functions well. As far as the building physical needs, the first thing starts with the site. When you look at the site's very tight, it's close to the road, it's close to property lines, there's not much space around the building, and so that creates issues with car and bus separation, as well as pedestrian safety and other issues. The building lacks a sprinkler system, and when Mike was talking about the middle school as being energy inefficient, well, at least it has insulation. The walls at Griffin have no insulation in the walls, and in fact, some of the walls are single-width concrete block, meaning the block that you see on the outside of the building is the same block you see on the inside with no insulation in between. Overall, the building is, well, it started in the 1930s and grew up very organically over time, but the majority of the building is at least 70 years old, and therefore the conditions and the materials are starting to wear out, and it's just, the building is tired. So the conclusions, when we looked at all those things and added them up to the cost to refurbish the existing building, we saw that that cost exceeds 60% of the replacement value as determined by the New Hampshire Department of Education. They recommend at that point that districts consider new construction because they feel that putting money into a building that is in that much need is a bad investment. Some of the areas of the building we determined just are not salvageable, and that the best alternative would be to tear down sections of the building, sort of a surgical removal in order to create more opportunities on the site. But when you do that, suddenly we're building new construction. When you replace the portables and replace those areas, that's almost the same size as the existing building. So again, it comes down to, is this a good value for your money? Any kind of work that's done on that building, the building still is close to the property lines. It's still close to Route 3A. So those conflicts stay in place no matter what you do on that site. And lastly, the issue of functional obsolescence doesn't go away. Some of those spaces were still designed when the building was K-8 and no longer is that way. So moving forward from there, we wanted to assess not just the building needs, but also the program needs, basically educational styles and what is needed for spaces. And so we started by developing a list of principles that are created from what we heard from the school board and the committee and the staff, and created a list that we're constantly going back to make sure that we're hitting the goals that we established at the beginning. The next thing we did is we scheduled several listening sessions. Another thing I heard today already is that people don't feel like they're fully informed. And me and my team have tried to be very transparent to make sure that we're getting all the feedback we can. And so we set up these different listening sessions and got a ton of information from that. We also interviewed staff, and we even interviewed school students. We went into the school and talked to school students, had them draw us plans for new elementary schools, and gave us some really insightful feedback. One of the biggest things from that is their desire to be more connected with the outdoor environment. And so our plans actually reflect a change in how we would have designed the building by adding in connections from the indoors to the outdoors based on the students' input. Finally, we put out a survey that was published, and we got a lot of feedback from that as well. I just want to say at this point, if anybody feels like they missed those, there's a lot of information that's going to be posted on the website that you can get this information from. There's videos, and we'll be doing more of this in the future, so don't feel like you're being left out. We're going to make sure that everybody has a chance to give us some input. So some of those community thoughts, like I said, the students gave us some great information. There was a lot of comment about the design styles and things of that nature. One of the overriding things was most people that showed up at these meetings said that they understood the need for this project, and that the existing building they felt really didn't have much value into it, and they wanted to see something new. The educational programming side of things is what I just mentioned, is looking at the spaces, the type of spaces, and how the spaces work together. And it comes together in a document we call the educational specifications. And that document is what we use to design the new concept. So we haven't started doing the new concepts yet. We've only begun to look at different styles and whatnot, but there's a lot more work to happen from here. So some of those things that we put together that's going to be part of the ed specs is looking at the type of spaces, what's direct instruction versus what's group collaboration. There's programs such as STEAM or STEM, basically science, technology, engineering, math, and arts, that is becoming more prominent in these buildings, and also professional learning communities. And what those are is areas in the building where teachers can get together to collaborate, to share information between themselves, and allow older, more veteran teachers to mentor the younger, newer teachers in their development in their career. That also translates into students being able to collaborate as well. Much like the middle school project that you've just heard a lot about, there's been a directive by the school board and the committees to look at energy design for this new construction. We've got an opportunity to go over the top with that style of design to make sure that we're saving as much as possible for the district. At the same time, I'm hearing a lot today, but we've also discussed it in our groups, making sure that the numbers make sense, that what we're doing pays back over time. And so the first concept with this isn't just about money, it's about resilience. And what I mean about resilience is some of the things you've heard today already, but it's the ability for the district to have some independence from the utilities. And it's not just about, again, the cost, it's about if the power were to go down, is your emergency shelter with the school going to stay open when you need it? Are your children more safe at a school that's operating than at home where there's no heat and electricity? So resilience is a big part of this, not just the money part. How we do this, we've studied different concepts, and at this level, again, we don't have a design, so what we've got is what we call a shoebox model. If we have a shoebox and we look at the insulation in that box, what is it going to spend? If we use the data that we've got from the existing building, we determine a value which is called an energy usage intensity. It's just a way of putting a metric to this energy use. The existing building has an EUI of 84. Compare that to most schools in the state. Most schools in the state have an average of 75. So this building is higher based on what you've been spending for energy than most schools in the state. If we were to build a new school building, we would be required by code to build it to code minimum, which is an EUI of 43. So by just building the code, we're going to reduce the amount of energy you spend in about half. What our goal is to get to an EUI of 19. You do that through additional insulation, better quality windows, better quality ventilation. We can basically reduce the code minimum building by half again. And so our cost with this new building is about a quarter of what the existing building is. So how does that relate to year-to-year cost? And you've seen some of this already. Now this is just an example. It is not meant to be specific, and I can't address specific numbers, but the models that we've done to date show that the cost of the additional style of construction is below the line and in the red. So that's the cost for building something in a better style of construction. The green above the line is what you would have spent on energy with the existing building. And so the dots in between are the difference between the two. And what this shows is that, yes, the first few years, your cost is going to be a little bit greater or about even with the energy saving, but over time, that will pay back, and that by the time the bond is paid off, you will be saving a lot of money every year. So the last thing that we did that was off of the menu that the school board gave us was to explore multiple options. We were asked to simply look at the site next to the middle school, but we decided that we wanted to look at more than that to make sure that that decision was the best. And so we came up with 5 different options. The first option is do nothing, and basically it's the cost that you currently have for energy and maintenance and those type of things. And then the next option is additions, renovations to the current building. The third is a new building on the lower property, basically next to Griffin Memorial School. The fourth option is a new building next to, on the upper site that we call next to Litchfield Litchfield Middle School. And then the fifth option is, what if we were able to find a new piece of property somewhere else in town and build a new elementary school? There's a lot of pros and cons for each of these options. I won't list out through each one of these. But first of all, the do nothing is obviously the status quo, what you have, which many people have said is not an option. And it doesn't solve any of the issues, the site issues, the water issues, or anything else that goes along with it. So not really a good option. Building next to the current elementary school, it solves a few problems. It makes sure that everything is brought up to code. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, the renovations and additions. It solves a few problems. It brings everything up to code. It adds some insulation. It's better quality of education. But some of the cons are you've got a major construction project happening while students are in school, and that's a lot of distraction to education. It also doesn't solve the site issues because you can't move the existing building away from the roads and the property lines, and it doesn't add in the kind of insulation that we'd be able to if we were building new. New building on the lower site, it solves those problems that I just mentioned. It gets it further away from the road. It allows us to design everything to code and to current educational styles. And it does maintain the school in the same area as your historic location of the original building. But there's still some disruption. There's also some site issues. There's a lot of wetlands and other problems around the existing building that would not be solved. We would just be moving the building from one location to the other. And so there's a lot of issues, problems with building on the lower site. The original favored area would be next to the Litchfield Middle School. And one of the first things we found by doing a new study on that site is that the water issues, the high water table that we're experiencing with the Griffin School is actually just as bad, if not worse, at the upper site. And that when you take away some of the constraints, that there's really not that much space to build a new elementary school. You're also doubling the amount of traffic that would go through the current driveway, which goes through a residential area, and we felt that that was not a good idea. And getting a different driveway to another part of the site we found was infeasible due to elevation changes and wetlands and other issues. So that brings us to the last option, which is build a new elementary school on a new site. And pretty much the only downside to that option, because all the other things are the same, building new, we're able to meet current codes and educational styles. We're able to design it in a way that makes sense for the community, but there's not a site to put it on. Since this option was brought up, there's been a lot of talk about, is there a site in town? And there is an effort to try to find that, and I think that's what Mike was referring to. The next article will actually discuss that possibility. So we wanted to create some, even though we don't have a site, we can't design a new building for you now. We wanted to set some goals, some standards that we're going to be designing it to. First thing we do is we created a program, basically a list of spaces and the sizes of those and what the different types are and how they relate to each other. We put that into a diagram that kind of shows the adjacency and how they would relate and how they would work. So we don't have a floor plan yet. We just have a bubble diagram like this that we're working from. We started doing some just pretty pictures, if you would, just to show you the style of design that we'd be looking at. And what you're seeing here is the front porch. I feel it's very important to have an entranceway to the school that's very obvious, very safe, and sheltering for students and people approaching the building. So a student that's being picked up by a parent could be under the porch while it's raining. It's a gathering place for people, but it also, importantly, it brings the scale of the building down to a level that's more familiar. You know, a front porch is very residential in look and feel, and it was more familiar for the students. And if you picture yourself as being a kindergartner showing up for school for the first time, you don't want to approach this two-story brick structure that's very imposing. A porch is more welcoming and warming for the younger students. Some of the interior looks that we're looking at, one of the concepts we're trying to embrace here is utilizing spaces in multiple ways. So rather having a gymnasium that's only a gymnasium and a cafeteria that's only a cafeteria, we have a movable partition between the two, so that way you can open that up for larger space if you have a bigger event. So this is kind of sort of a conservative way to minimize the amount of new spaces you have, but make best use out of every area that you do have. And this is another view where you can see where it's opened up and larger community events can be happening. That concept we carry throughout the building, and so this is a look at the corridor. Now this doesn't look like a typical straight, narrow corridor with double loaded with classrooms on each side. We open up the corridor a little bit and create these areas where instruction or learning or just other activities can happen, and so you're using the corridor as an educational space and not just in the classrooms. So what you're seeing here is on the left-hand side, you've got a teacher that's drawing on a marker board that's in the hallway, and you've got students that are on risers, watching what's going on. Behind them, there's somebody that's reading a book in a nook, and there's somebody else that's on a computer. The classrooms themselves would be large, a lot of windows, different instructional areas where teachers can be doing one activity in one spot and a different activity in another, and lots of storage in between. So here's an important part of it. When I was saying earlier that there's going to be more opportunity to give us feedback, and I've heard feedback already tonight on some of these concepts. Right now we're talking about the $125,000 that would go towards our effort in designing for next year. Our first goal is to apply for state building aid, which the deadline is July 1st of 2022. And if we can get some help on ranking high on that, that would be fantastic. But it's a competitive system, and not everybody gets state aid. So we're going to put the best quality report that we can in that application in order to try to achieve getting that money. From that point through the end of the year, we will continue with design development, basically detailing some of these concepts, coming up with a definite floor plan and elevations, and something that a construction manager, you heard about construction management earlier in the middle school presentation. We would also hire a construction manager who will also put a guaranteed maximum price together for us, so that way by March of 2023, there would be solid plans and a guaranteed maximum price for bond vote. And we'll also know by then if the project is funded, at least partially, by the state. So through that time, again, my team and I are transparent. We're always looking for input and hoping that we can engage the community even more, have more of those listening sessions like we've already had, and make sure that the new elementary school that we design is designed by Litchfield with our assistance rather than something that we want you to have. This is a Litchfield project. Look for the website that has this information available, and we're going to continue to post information on that website as we work through the designs.
Kyle, thanks for that overview. And to Kyle's point, if you go to the district website, you'll see a Reimagining GMS website that we've created where all the information on the GMS project is housed. And you'll also see a Reinvigorating LMS website where that information on the project is being housed. Just quickly, so the money that we're adding in here, 2 years ago we asked for $70,000 to do this work. The voters supported that and put the money in. Last year we asked for $100,000. The voters supported us on that. When the legislature had an additional allocation of state funding, we asked the voters to park that money in there because building a school is a costly adventure. So we've been gradually saving that up. There currently is $829,432 in this account. We're asking for an additional $125 in order to continue to be able to do the work that we need to do to keep Kyle and his team on board with that design work. The one thing that we've learned, if you look at all this work, we're now trying to figure out where to locate the school, and that's going to involve a land purchase. The school district does not own the land that's necessary. So the problem that we've encountered with this expendable trust fund is that nowhere in there does it talk about land. So we're going to have to figure out what to do. But the work and the money we've invested in the work is the right work that we're doing. So at this point, I don't want to get into Article 8 because I want to stick with Article 7, which is adding another 125 so that we can continue our work.
Okay. So with that, do we have questions or comments on Article 7?
John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive. I was just wondering, how much money have we invested in Griffin for maintenance, preventive maintenance for the last couple of years, or have we just given up on the school?
So we've, Griffin is fairly expensive to maintain. For example, we had a failure of a key electrical component there, and that was about $35,000 to replace the part that was necessary. That was just one failure. And there's also a lot of delayed maintenance, John, that's been sort of stacking up over time. But we've asked Dave Ross to minimize the amount that we spend at the building because what's emerged throughout this process is that it's putting good money at a bad situation. It's not getting us out of it. So there's more that we could spend, but we're not.
Okay. My second question is, has any district copied an existing school using their plans to build it instead of paying for architectural fees? Like it sounds like you want a zero school, I guess you call it zero, like in Oyster River. Why don't we just purchase the plans and build that school instead of all these architectural fees that we're going to be paying for?
So I'll try to address that, and then I'll ask Kyle or Dave to even address it. So one of the questions we were asked was when the elementary school project had been brought forward in the past and plans were drawn up, why are we not just using those plans? Those plans are just one step beyond the bubble diagram that Kyle had. So you sort of take the conceptual, this is what we want in the school, and then you block it out and you say, here's where they're going to be located and so forth. It never went beyond that stage. So, so those plans just are not adequate. We have to have plans for this school. And the other thing is that designing the building and siting the building is a really specific task. So, you know, we can't just take the plans from Oyster River and relocate them to Litchfield. You can be inspired by aspects of it, but you can't just build it over here and replicate that. That's my answer and my understanding of it. But Kyle, did I get that fairly right?
Yeah, if you have the land to fit it, though, it would work, correct?
Well, short answer is no, and the reason being is that a building that was designed 10 years ago was designed under different codes. And so there's new building codes, new electrical codes, that would all have to be upgraded. Anybody that's built a new house, you know, you go through the magazines, you pick out a plan, give it to the builder, here, build this. Well, the first thing they do is they say, well, do you want to make changes? And pretty soon you've made changes throughout the plan. So what we're doing here is we're starting from scratch and looking at the size and how it works, the current educational trends. I mean, the collaboration areas that we're talking about is something that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. And we certainly don't want to pull out a failed attempt from like the 70s where they had open concept, and we know we don't want to do that. So there's new ways of doing it that we don't want to miss out on by simply regurgitating something that happened in the past.
Can I ask how much the architectural fees will be for this project?
Yeah, if average
round figure.
Yeah, sure. The average architect fee is somewhere between 5% and 7%.
Thank you.
So, you know, a couple of the things that go along with that is that the original drawings that were done 2005 were for a K through 5, what was it, 800 student school? And what we're proposing here, because we've studied the enrollment projections and we've looked grade by grade, almost classroom by classroom, how the kids are going to move through the system. We've also studied the space layout for the middle school, and what's been determined is that the move of the 5th grade up to the middle school is working out well, and there's no reason to move them back. So we're actually able to build a smaller building than what would have been built 10 or 15 years ago. So we're actually saving money by spending that additional time and studying it. And you know, some of the other elements of it are much different than what was before. So it would be a mistake to just take the plans that were developed before and build them now because they're so out of date.
Okay, further questions or comments about Article 7? Hearing none, it will appear on the warrant as written. Next, we have Article 8, Contingency Fund. Shall the district adopt a revision to RSA 198-4B enacted in 2020, which allows the district to retain up to 5% of the district's net assets in any year? I'm sorry, net assessment in any year. Allows the expenditure of any amount retained after the school board first holds a public hearing, and further requires the school board to include a report on the retained fund balance in its annual report to the district. On this, we have school board representation from Mrs. Harrison.
Thank you. I wanted to present Article 8 as read. It refers to RSA 198:4-B, which basically would allow the school district to retain fund balance at the end of the school year into the following year's budget. Why do we need these funds? There's only one purpose to this article: funding source for the purchase of land for a new elementary school in Litchfield. So Mr. Barker and Dr. Jetty just kind of outlined what the plan is and the process that we're undergoing with relative to the GMS project, and in our community forums and on our team, the direction that we're looking at is relocating, building a new elementary school on a new site. So you have, I can commit. I'm here in front of the taxpayers and in front of the viewers at home or anyone who might watch this later, saying that the unspent funds available at the end of this year, if this article passes, will be used towards land purchase and furthering of the GMS project. It is not a slush fund for the school board. We're not lining our pockets. We cannot spend 1 penny out of this unassigned fund balance without having a public hearing and requesting public input. So the way that the process goes, there are several checks and balances. If this article passes and the funding is secured by this article, and if a purchase and sales agreement is reached on a piece of property in town, and the Superior Court grants us the ability to hold a special meeting, then we can bring forward a project later this year for a taxpayer vote. So the intention with this allocation would be to further the momentum and the process so that we can bring a design and a site and a project, a proposal to the voters in the March of 2023.
Questions or comments?
Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. If there is one purpose for this fund, why is there not an article that clearly outlines that purpose? Because we've heard we cannot tie the hands of future boards to decisions made in the past. There is nothing in that warrant that would prevent or guarantee that it will be rescinded once this land is purchased. You will have the ability forever to maintain a fund balance of $1.5 million and growing as our budgets increase. If you have an intended purpose, why is there not a warrant article that clearly states that purpose?
This is the route that our legal counsel has advised us to go, and it is not true that this is into perpetuity. At any time, a voter can write a petition warrant article to rescind this policy, this procedure, including at the end of next year.
We have warrant articles for land purchases. We've done it on the town side. There is nothing saying that the school board cannot put forward a creative fund for land purchases. So my question would be, is this due to timing and that when we came up with this warrant article, it was too late? Is it because budget committee would have to vote on it and we're concerned about the potential outcome? Like, why go this route when you say there's a specific purpose, and yet that purpose is nowhere in the proposed warrant article.
It is a matter of timing. With this, in this way, we would be able to secure a purchase and sales. We don't currently have one to put on the ballot this year. We don't know what the amount is, so we felt that this was the best way to go. This would use end-of-year funds without asking taxpayers for another contribution to that point. So yes, it is a timing thing. Our momentum is such that we would like to have the article on the ballot in March, and if we are going to secure and purchase a parcel of land to do so, that will need to be on the ballot in March.
Why this March? Because there's nothing saying that you can't have a purchase and sale agreement contingent on a March vote. That is what the town did when they purchased the land near the recycling center. If we do not have land identified, we do not have an agreement, we do not know an amount, why not wait until all those ducks are in a row and put it on next March's ballot?
So to answer the timing question, we've been clear, and in the capital plan, we are queued up to have a bond vote in front of the voters for March of '23. I mean, that's the plan. And by the way, there are other things in town that also need to be done. So respectfully, we want to maintain the position that we've been allocated, which is to come forward with a bond vote in March of '23. So if, none of us went into this. I think you heard Kyle lead off by saying we tasked him with helping us design a school on the LMS site, only to find out that that was not going to work. So we now need to find this piece of land, and in order to have a successful bond vote, our goal is to come back to the voters to approve. You have to approve the land purchase, by the way. It's not something the board can do. The voters have to say, yes, you may buy this piece of land. Give us your blessing on that. We can then empower Kyle to design the right school on the right site and to have the plans in front of you in March of '23. That's why we're doing it this way. This is already money that's been raised and appropriated. It's in our budget. We're asking to be able to retain it so that we can come back to you if we get the wrong piece of property. If you think we're overpaying for the piece of property, you get to decide that in that vote. But if you say yes to us later this spring, sometime this summer, Kyle can stay on track and get the school designed and ready to go for March of '23, which is what we've been saying our goal was all along.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich Street. Firstly, I want to thank the school board. You're kind of in a thankless position, especially over the past couple of years. I've been in town 20 years, and I've never talked at a school board deliberative session before, but I have to say that I would not vote in favor of this article because it's just too open-ended, and it doesn't have any reference to land whatsoever in it. What this article really is saying, and I've read through it many times, is that if there's a budget negotiated between the school board and the budget committee, and that budget is $24 million, say, and the actual cost of service to educate our kids comes out to $22.8 million, that the $1.2 million that's left over, instead of going back to the taxpayer or to the unassigned fund balance, goes into account that can be used at the school board's discretion. There's no mention of any land here or anything like that, so I just think that's a bad play. I understand that the school board's looking to buy a piece of land. I understand that you're late to the table and getting a warrant article put on the town warrant to purchase a piece of land. I get it, and that this is the way to kind of get around it. So I feel for you there, and we do need a piece of land, and that's cool. But to be honest, the whole way that this went down kind of confuses me and upsets me a little bit, because it came in at the last meeting, the last half of the last meeting. It was a discussion that lasted only like a half an hour. The wording in the article is a little bit confusing to the taxpayer, though legally probably correct. It's confusing. It didn't even have a title on it. It really should be called something like the Budget Surplus Retention Fund. And then just most importantly, really to the school board, I saw 3 or 4 members, and I watched this meeting multiple times.
I saw 3 or 4 members have reservations about this warrant article. One person called it a potential looking like a slush fund. Another person said at the school board meeting that we need to tie this to a land purchase and we need to put a date on it. Another person at the school board meeting said, whoa, this is last minute. I can't, make a decision on this in 15 minutes. And so that to me tells me that you guys had reservations about the whole thing. And my opinion is that you guys should shoot the arrow straight on this one. Shoot it straight. Change this article to say that it's going to be for this school year only, 22-23, and say that the money is going to be used to purchase land. And I think you'll have a much better percentage of actually pushing that through. I don't think there's much of a chance that this is going to be pushed through. But if you shoot the arrow straight, tell the voter what you're trying to do, change the article to address that, I think you'll have a better shot. Yep.
Jason, thank you for that input. And by the way, thank you for everything you do to make the town look beautiful. It's much appreciated, including our new fencing out front. So basically, we were operating, as soon as the idea that we had to purchase land emerged, we were operating under the belief that the $829,000 that we had, a portion of that could be used for land purchase, until we really carefully reviewed the wording of the original warrant from 3 years ago, and it says study, planning, and costs of new construction. It does not say land purchase. So when legal said, time out, you can't use that money. That money cannot be used to purchase land. We went, well then, how can we purchase land? And it was on the advice of Gordon Graham, who is not here today, but Gordon is in the same firm as Mike. And Gordon's suggestion was that the cleanest way to do it is this contingency fund. So the wording here came from legal, and it was a way to utilize tax dollars that have already been raised toward the purchase of land. We're sitting here in a recorded meeting, publicly stating we have one purpose. And to Carrie's point, anybody sitting here today can put a motion forward to rescind this. So if you feel that the board doesn't do that or does not follow through on that commitment, a petition to rescind this from the board is always welcome and will be voted on by the taxpayers. But our goal, our sole purpose, is that land purchase.
So, Carrie Douglas again, question to legal. Is there a way to make this have a sunset provision that after a certain year, it goes away? If it's for one intended purpose and for one intended year, can we sunset it?
No, the statute doesn't allow you to put a sunset provision into this warrant article. What it does allow you to do is what the superintendent was referring to. You could come back a year later and vote to rescind it.
So the only recourse is to rescind the whole thing. Should we decide, one, the land doesn't get approved, or it does get purchased, but the only way we can do it is to rescind it. If it does not get rescinded, does the money still get collected?
If the money is in there, it stays in there until it's rescinded, at which point it goes back and would reduce the tax rate.
Okay. Well, given our history on not necessarily returning funds upon completed projects, I'd be concerned.
Robin Corbeil, 4 Nesmith Court. I support Jason on this should be a straightforward warrant article for $1.5 million to purchase land. Because my fear is we have a budget that is either $23 or $24 million to educate the students of Litchfield, and we are still in a pandemic. It is still one of the most difficult jobs to do. And when you put something out there that says, hey, if we can do it for $1.5 million less, we can buy the land. You're now taking that budget and dropping it down. And that budget is put out there to educate our children. And so I, even as an educator, struggle, right? Because there's no doubt that we need a new elementary school, right? I don't think anybody is really debating that. But where that money comes from to buy that land, does it come from the money that's put aside to educate the kids that are currently in the classroom in an unpredictable year, probably yet again? Or does it come from other money that we've set aside and say, land is important to us as a community, and we're going to put that money aside? Because I don't want to see teachers and administrators having to make decisions, whether consciously or subconsciously, about whether we spend money to educate the kids that are currently in our buildings and our classrooms, or do we put money aside to buy the land for the elementary building?
Robin, can I put you on the spot for a second?
No, but yes.
Well, you can say no, but have you met all your students' needs this year?
No. I will tell you that...
By budget, has the budget allowed you to do the things
Have
you need
I
to do?
been told, where are we going to get the money? We don't have that money? Yes. I have been told that when I've made requests about certain things. In general, does it happen? We're a well-supported school in general. I will give you hands down. But the job we're doing right now is incredibly stressful because we are not just teaching. And Thursday, my kids got 10% more of me in the classroom because I didn't have to worry about reminding those masks that slipped down that they needed to come up. I didn't have to project my voice through it. And however you feel about masks, we have to police them. And if 10% of my energy is policing that, only 90% is going towards giving kids. And that's nobody's fault. That's where we live.
No, I completely understand.
But thinking about the land that I want that new elementary school to have, right? And this, that I would love to give to my students in the classroom right now as an opportunity.
My reason for asking, Robin, is that this is this year's fund balance. So, you know, when we have not been able to hire paraprofessionals, which has an impact on you, I get it. But if I could magically get paraprofessionals to apply for the positions, we'd fill them. But that money that we're not spending currently is the money that would then go into this contingency fund. So we're not going to ask you to make a choice next year. Would you like to purchase these robots, or would you rather contribute toward the land fund? That's not what this is about.
No, but it's
This is about
there.
leftover money this year, if there is leftover money.
But it's only left over if we don't have those. And again, that paraprofessional, if we doubled the salary for paraprofessionals, we'd fill them. We would. And we wouldn't have as big of a fund at the end, but we would fill those positions. But if we're given a choice between keeping it here, this is a choice I don't want. So I guess in my mind, that's my fear. And I apologize, I have a tired teacher brain.
Yeah.
I just support what Jason's saying. If we need this money for this land, then we need the money for the land. And put out an article or change the article to say, this is an additional to whatever the 23 or the 24 that passes when we all vote and get our choice. This is another thing that we have decided is important in our town.
Good.
This is Carrie Douglas speaking as a budget committee member. The question about whether or not our teachers have enough funding to do their job, I think is probably intended to elicit a certain reaction, but the reality is that's not the budget committee and that's not this budget. When we return money every year, or there's money available for encumbrances, that means there's money available. It just hasn't been allocated the way some of our teachers would like to see it. That's not a message that the budget committee is not adequately funding it. That's more of a administration's manner by which they disperse the funds. So I appreciate the question. I just didn't care for the implication. Thank you.
Robin, I just have one more thing to say. Because of the nature and the timing, and we've talked about this is for 1 year for one purpose, it only applies to this year's fund balance, which we have more of because we haven't been able to fill those positions. Next year, when the LSSA, the support staff and our teachers have those raises, we don't expect to have a large fund balance. So that's another reason why it only pertains to what's left at the end of this year. Does that make sense
So
to
the
you?
$1.5 million is
Nobody
going...
said $1.5 million.
Or 1.2?
Nobody
1.2?
said anything about how much the land purchase.
No,
would
no,
be.
but the 5%,
No. Right, but it will not be that amount of money. It can be up to 5%, but it's only based on what we have as underspent at the end of the year.
but it can be up to 5% of our current budget, correct?
It can be, but
Our
that
current
won't be,
budget is
that
what?
won't be left at the end of the year.
But what you're asking us to vote on
Yeah.
is up to 5% of our current budget. What is 5% of our current budget?
5% of the overall budget would be about $1.2 million. But that's in the RSA. That's what the RSA says. We're not carving out 5% of our budget to allocate for land purchase. That's just the total maximum amount.
But it could be.
It won't be
That's
because.
but that's what we're voting on. We're voting on taking up to $1.2 million.
Robin, that's really a scare tactic, and let me be
No,
clear.
no, I'm just asking.
No, let me be clear. So last year, our fund balance was $337,000, okay? That's the actual dollar amount. The 5% of our budget is the $1.2 million. We've never had that kind of money left over, and we don't anticipate having that kind of money left over. The most we had since I've been here was $708,000, and that's the year that we shut 2 schools down because of COVID, and we were able to capture a lot of savings from that. So you're talking, I don't know what it's going to be. It's way too early to predict what the fund balance is 5 months from now. But we're not talking $1.2 million,
But then why
and we're
not
not
put-
going to stop buying things in order to have the land money.
But why not put 2.5% then and not 5%?
Well, the law is the 5%. That's the number, if I'm correct, Mike, it's the number that's in the contingency law. The legislature originally had 2.5%, and they increased it to 5%. That's the maximum you can have, but we just don't anticipate having that kind of money available.
But we as a community can't vote on 2.5?
Let me double check with Mike, but I think when you invoke the RSA, you're invoking the aspects of it.
You can vote a different percentage. 5% is the maximum percentage that you can vote. So you could do 2.5 or something else. The other thing I need to point out is it's not 5% of the current year's budget. It's 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment, which means money that comes to fund the budget from property taxes. Doesn't include grants, doesn't include other sources of revenue.
So can someone tell us that number? So that would be...
Corey, can you do that quick math? It
Do
would be
the math.
5. Spent or encumbered, right?
All right, we have to move on to other questions.
I think to Mrs. Corbeil's comment, though, is unless this is sunsetted, that amount can accumulate until you hit that threshold.
Right.
So it may be 100,000 this year, and if it doesn't get repealed or removed in 5-10 years, we could have 1.3 million in this fund. So it's allowed. You can put money. I'm sure you can respond, Corey. Go ahead.
Can I make one clarification? It is not a fund, it's a fund balance designation. And number 2, it has to be recalculated every year.
That is fine, but you return. But are you allowed to roll money over? Say you have 100,000 this year. You put it into the fund. We don't use it. Next year you have 100,000 plus whatever, 50,000. Does it accumulate? So if it's So I think what this highlights is the importance of making sure we have enough time to review these. So if you don't mind explaining how the fund balance works, then perhaps some of our concerns will be put to rest.
I think, Carrie, I would welcome a petition warrant article authored by you on the 23 ballot to rescind this policy. We've already been through
Believe
this.
me, I'll get the signature.
Fully expect it.
Just to be clear, it does not compound. It's not, if it's 5%, it's not 5% plus another 5% the next year plus another 5%. whatever the percentage maximum is, it can't go above that. You can add to it from year to year, but you can never go over that maximum.
And one other point,
That's the number I need to think.
the question about 5% versus some other percent, 2.5% or what have you. We don't know what a piece of land is going to cost, right? We don't have purchase and sales on a piece of land. Land in southern New Hampshire is hard to find and expensive. I would encourage you to leave it at the 5% because if we can identify and if we can pull this off, we can have a purchase and sales agreement to bring forward. That's the only request. If you restrict this back to 1% or 2%, then it may not be enough to accomplish what we want, and it can actually sidetrack the timing of the elementary school project. So I would encourage the voters to leave it as we're proposing it and know that you have a commitment from us to use it for that one purpose only.
Okay, we'll go to next question.
Peter Plansky, 144 Talent Road. I just want to speak in support of what Jay has said and what Kerry has said with regard to the article. And I've not done this before, but can we change the article to encumber it to land purchase? Can we change the article to have it be for a one-year period? Are those things possible? And I would give some free advice to the school board in general, going back to when Campbell was built and football came in. The special the special meeting to get past Article 2 and Article 4 is a way around no means no. We all know that. I think you all know that. You lost an issue last year. You came back to it. Nobody votes in those special elections. Voter turnout is very low in a non-presidential election. So it's easier to get your stuff through that way. The other is this, somebody said slush fund. I know one of the people on the board said slush fund. Unless you encumber it specifically, you can do with it whatever you want, right? There's no restriction. So my recommendation would be to take the time to rework the article and have it be specifically tied to a land purchase. Or find a piece of land and present it next year with a number, much like we did when the property was sold next to the dump. So, but the perception here is from those of us sitting in the bleachers that you're doing stuff to get around the rules.
We have been completely honest about our motivations. I can't change your perception of us. I can only ask for your trust.
Historically, there is
I know.
The school board, before you people were even here, doesn't have a great reputation.
I understand that. I understand
The issue at hand is, can we change, and it's a question, and maybe it's for Mr. Perry, can we change the article in such a way that requires it to be used for land purpose, and it sunsets in a period of time, whether that's a year or 2 years?
Yeah, the answer to both questions is no. You can't sunset it. We had talked about that earlier. What you can do is rescind it at any time after you adopt it, but you can't sunset it in the adoption. And secondly, you can't change the wording of it to limit it to a land purchase. You also can't change the subject matter of the article to a straight land purchase article because there hasn't been notice of that in the posted warrant to voters.
Then I would make a motion to amend the article to 0% of the unused fund balance.
We can't amend the article, the percentage.
Absolutely can change the percentage.
Sorry, Mr. Moderator.
Right? You can change the percentage.
I don't believe you can zero it out.
No.
0.25%.
Well, if you want to make a motion, we need it in writing.
While they're kibitzing Pete Salidas, 31 Pearson Street, so I hear what you're saying, you want to keep it at 5, but to me, it's like 5 is going to be the padding all future budgets are going to come out at. So you're going to say there's no reason for the school board to look at their budget and say, hey, we got to sharpen our pencil. because everything over is gonna go to this, and I don't wanna say slush fund, but that's what it is. It's, you gotta, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And if there's no specific line tied to that, then you can spend it however you want. And that's how it reads.
I do understand the concern, and I understand the concern too, that traditionally those things have happened. I think we sharpened our pencil. What?
Excuse me, we cannot have conversations without being at the mic, please.
Right. Again, this is the warrant article that we're putting forward for this year. Anyone who would like to resend it after this year, feel free.
I would just like to, if I can, say, my question is not for whatever I was accused of doing, I don't know. It's because I don't feel like this warrant article is clear. I don't understand it when I read it. I was surprised to see it on the document when I looked 2 nights ago. And I feel like I'm pretty well informed about what was going to be on the warrant articles. I thought there was going to be $1 million warrant article for the design work at GMS. It's not there. That's what I was under the understanding of. And again, I apologize, tired teacher brain, I have not been at as many school board meetings as I've been in the past. I didn't know anything about this warrant article. I don't understand it, which means that I believe that there's probably a large percentage of our community that doesn't understand the intention of this article, the way that it is written, and what you want to use it for. There's not a ton of people here today learning this information.
Right.
So it is confusing when you word it in the way that you did. And what I'm saying is, I again believe, and I know it's too late to do it, that if we wanted a land warrant, we need to be clear so that everybody in town who doesn't have the time, the energy, the effort, our nurses, our doctors, our police officers who are dead tired because we are still in a pandemic and they are still working really hard, don't have the time to look through all of the little bits of this so that they can make a really well-informed vote. So that was my intention, not to sabotage anything or antagonize anybody, but because if I don't understand it, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of other people who don't understand the meaning of it.
Thanks, Robin. I think the board understands that, and we understand the task before us to explain this, to fully explain our intent, not just here today and for the people viewing at home or who might view the recording, but also in the mail-out ballot explanation that comes out before the election. Thank you.
Hi, Diane Plansky, 144 Talent Road. As I inappropriately spoke from the bleachers, you can't promise me anything, Christina, that you're going to do past the election date, as you are up for re-election.
True.
Members of the board are leaving the board and running for other positions. So nothing you promised me, even Dr. Jetty could be, taken out and a new superintendent can be coming in. You can't promise me anything. Because tomorrow, we don't know. We didn't realize 2 years ago
I see what you're saying.
that
Yep.
there was going to be a pandemic. So whatever you mean, your intent with this, should say it, okay? It should say what it means, what it is. And so, therefore, I think it needs to be removed. And if that's what we have to do by changing it, until you can give us an honest, straightforward way that the former school board members meant it, and the new school board members will have to enforce it. So I appreciate your intentions, and I really appreciate Robin and coming forward to talk about a warrant article, but I wasn't real happy about her being questioned about her classroom. To me, that was not necessarily appropriate. She was there as a resident, and therefore I think that as a resident, she should be able to speak on the warrant article, and that's it. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich. I'm going to try this. It doesn't sound like it's going to work, but I'm going to ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. I'm going to paraphrase the first bit of the sentence, but I'm going to say RSA yada, 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 which allows the district to retain up to 5% of the district's net assessment in the 2021-2022 school year and allows the expenditures of any amount retained after to be used for the purpose of purchasing land for the construction of a new elementary school after the school board first holds a public hearing, yada, yada, yada. I added that one sentence in there that says 2021, 2022 school year for the purpose of purchasing land. Thumbs up or thumbs down legally?
We're going to find out.
I bet you it's a thumbs down.
I have to say, I like the yada yadas, though. That was a nice touch.
That's legal speak.
I'm sorry, but you can't do that. That's not what the law provides.
Thanks for trying, Jason.
Hopefully our last question or comment.
Maybe, we'll see. It's only 12:30. The one other thing, back to my free advice, is because Ms. Douglas is being nice enough to write the amendment, because my penmanship is horrific. But the other thing is the lease, right? The lease for the middle school. Mr. Larry said it would typically be a bond, okay? The reason, and I think we all know what the reason is it's not a bond requires 2/3 majority, and you all don't think you're going to get a 2/3 majority. So you did it this way. Again, it's another way around the will of the voter. And this kind of stuff is why everybody looks at everything the school does as shady. And honestly, I think it's time we need people on the school board who don't have kids in school, who don't have to worry about retribution, which is a long-standing tradition in Litchfield.
There are additional reasons that we decided to pursue funding with an with a municipal lease purchase, including that it's less expensive, it's less cost to the taxpayer, and in order to begin the project sooner and take advantage of the summer months when we're not in school, the municipal lease purchase allows us to begin the project sooner. Again, it was not to put one over on taxpayers or to do anything shady.
Yes.
But I understand that traditionally that perception has been there.
Okay. His name and his address is on it. So you're actually going to have to speak on this afterwards, so. I've been presented with an amendment, and it says, shall the district adopt revisions to RSA, we'll go yada, 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 enacted in 2020, which allows the district to retain up to 0.25% of the district's net assessment in any year, allows the expenditure of any amount retained after the school fund balance in its annual report to the district. Let's make sure that this passes muster.
What I would say is you left out some of the language that's in here now. If I understand this, what you're trying to do is change the percentage from 5% to 0.25%.
That's correct.
I think if you just make a motion to change the percentage amount from 5% to 0.25%, that would be fine.
Okay. So a new car?
Your motion will be to change it from 0.5% to 0.25%. And then we can rewrite it afterwards.
Okay.
Okay?
So I'm good? Oh,
Please say
I
it.
make a motion to change the percentage from 5% to 0.25%.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Now we have discussion. Mr. Jetty? Dr.
So,
Jetty?
just to provide clarity over exactly what the numbers are. So the net assessment point that Mike is making, it's not that this is based on our entire budget. It's based on the local property tax assessment. That's $15 million. 0.25% is $37,500. That's what, by amending this, the maximum amount we could retain toward land purchases, $37,500. That is not going to buy a piece of property in Litchfield, and that is not going to allow us the state standard is we need a 10-acre piece of land, and that's just not going to be an adequate amount.
Dr. Jetty, my wish was to make it 0 and have you go through and do it properly. And
We won't buy land for nothing.
Pardon me?
We won't buy land for nothing either, so I appreciate the
No,
37.5, but
I
do I hear
understand that.
50?
I understand that. The issue at hand is the warrant article is written poorly, doesn't tie you to have any accountability for anybody on this board or the next board or the next board. So it's my way of just being a dink here to have you do it the right way.
So to Dr. Jetty's question, do we have a 10-acre parcel of land that's been identified? Because if we don't even have if there's not a 10-acre parcel in land available, then this discussion is moot to begin with.
It's not moot. We're asking the question for a purpose, but I can't get any further into it because that's not something we can discuss today.
So there is land. Okay, thank you.
If we could, we would, but we can't.
Thank you.
Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich Street.
Hopefully our last
Hopefully.
question or comment here on the amendment.
So if oh no, never mind.
We are working on the amendment only at this time, just to be clear. Is there any further question or comments on the amendment that has been made? Which, in brief, is to reduce it from 5% to 2.25%.
Yeah, Dan Harrison, 95 Pinecrest. You brought up, the gentleman who made the amendment, you brought up shady proceedings and you get fewer voters in an off-year election. You get fewer voters at this meeting. This is essentially negating the will of the voters of the whole town, where whatever's here, 100 people, are going to decide whether this is a yes or a no. You've essentially made it 0. Why not leave it, let the full body decide, which is more transparent, and 1,200 voters can vote no. And by the way, vote no. But let them vote. So I oppose this amendment.
Yes, Jason.
Jason Brennan, 23 Aldrich. There is a Plan B, correct? So a Plan B could be if this fails and you find a piece of land, you can have a special meeting, a special vote to vote on that land. Is that true or false?
At that point, we would need to raise and appropriate the funds. If this fails, we would need to ask voters to fund that. Yes, I mean, that is the mechanism.
At a special town meeting, is that true or
Right.
false?
True.
Okay, just check it. Thank you.
Just to be clear, though, Jason, that would, there's always the accusation that special meetings aren't as well attended and people aren't paying attention. So when you're raising the money, that's a concern, right? So what we're trying to do is to allocate the funding source now, and then make the ask for the specific piece of property when the time comes. So.
All right, so we're still on the amendment that I would like to take a vote on if we don't have further questions or comments.
I guess my rebuttal, Diane Flansky again, 144 Talent Road, my rebuttal to your conversation is that by the wording of that amendment or the article, that people won't know unless they're watching this meeting, what the promises have been made, what the intention is. No one will know unless they've actually been at this. So the people that are here to make a decision on that would be appropriate. We know that they're informed. They've heard everything that has been said about what the amendment or article actually means. So that's why I think that this group is not a bad group.
Yeah.
To put that to the actual smell test.
Diane, would you like to interview me for Facebook on this warrant article? And help me
Excuse
get
me?
the word out?
I'm sorry, what?
I'd love to be interviewed about this warrant article
Oh, I
in particular.
absolutely am going to interview you and all the other
Fantastic.
candidates, just like I've done in the past.
I'm saying it in jest, but absolutely, I think too, you know, people here and those who are watching at home, talk to your neighbors, and we always send out ballot information in a mailer to every resident in the town ahead of the vote.
Okay.
So we partner with the town to get that word out, but I
Let's
appreciate
get
your
back to the
concern.
amendment we have on Article 8.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The warrant article as proposed by the school board is elected by all the residents, all the voters in the town of Litchfield.
Could you please state your name and
Oh,
address for the record?
I'm sorry, Rhina Pettit, 132 Page Road. I apologize. The school board is elected by the voters of Litchfield. Everyone goes to the poll and decides on who's going to represent them. Who's here today to vote on the amendment to the warrant article? Are there 24 people here? 24 people? None of whom are elected by the voters of Litchfield. I would recommend, or I would ask that we decline or vote against the amendment and go with the school board's warrant article for the 5% and allow the voters of Litchfield to make the decision, all hundreds or thousands, whoever comes to the poll, not 24 people, let them decide on the 5%, and if they vote against the 5% warrant article, then the school board has to go back to Plan B. But taking a couple of dozen people to essentially zero out this warrant article is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
That's the system we have in this town for government.
My rebuttal would be this.
Please state your name.
Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. My rebuttal would be that if this were actually worded for a purpose and went to the voters for a land purchase, I'd be with you. Let them vote. However, that is not what Article 8 says. So since Article 8 does not reference a land purchase, it doesn't do anything that we're talking about, the voters are not voting on what they think they're voting on.
Just to be clear, we're actually working on the amendment right now
So,
to Article 8.
all right. So amended or not.
Moderator, can we call the question, please?
Go ahead.
No, it's your job. You need to call the
What was that? Oh,
question.
call the question. Well,
Kathy Snyder, 21 Mayflower Drive, Litchfield, this time. Good. Can we call the question?
yes. So now that the question has been called, we are going to ask for a vote on the amendment. This is not a vote on Article 8 yet. It's just the amendment that was proposed. So all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to...
I'm not sure they do.
I guess this is where we get to take out our little papers and do a vote. Actually, no. We can get around that. We can stand. All the ayes, please stand. All the ayes for the amendment. You can, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I got 23. Yep. You got it? Yep. And Rich? Okay. Now please sit. All the noes to the amendment, please stand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I have 19. I have 19. Okay. The amendment passes. So we now have an amended motion to, we actually now have an amended Article 8. In briefing, it changes the percentage from 5% to 0.25%. Is there any final discussion on this article? The vote count was 23 that were in favor of changing it, 19 against. So with that,
If this does fail, these funds could be used for a down payment for land so that it could be purchased later on down the line. So that's something to think about. So it's not just wasted money, so you at least can get a down payment if this ends up happening this way.
okay. If we have nothing else,
Viner Pettit, 132 Page Road. Is it possible to offer another amendment back to the original warrant article?
you can't change it back to what it was, no. You could change it, but you can't change it back to what it was.
Can I change it to 4%?
You'd have to write it on an index card, present it, right? Is there a second to that motion? There's a second. Could I have the name of the person that seconded it, please? There you go. You could write that you want to change it from 0.25% to 4%. Thank you. Okay, so we now have an amendment presented again, and in brief, this amendment is to change the article from 0.25% to 4%. Is there any questions or comments about that? Hearing, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to put dollars and cents to it. Percentages can be confusing. So 4% would be $600,000 that would be available for land purchase, as opposed to the $37,500 that is currently available for land.
Go ahead.
The dollar value is irrelevant. The fact that you're doing the same stuff the school board has done for years is the problem. Mr. Moderator, what is the process to move to a secret ballot? Because I'm...
5 signatures.
5 signatures?
Write it down. Well, actually, we have to actually address, do we do that before? It's for the vote. So it's before the vote, got it. So 5 signatures, and you have to state that you want it to be a secret ballot. Yellow, pink? I don't know. Do we do 1 or do we do 12? This is a pink? No. He spoke earlier, that's all I know. Oh, you All right, everyone, in preparation to this secret vote, let's use our pink slips. And we will use Litchfield ballot number 12.
Number 12, pink.
Number 12.
Is it pink? 12 pink.
12. And just, can you please print your name as well? Because you couldn't read.
I'm gonna do this in a second, I gotta go get ready.
Yep.
So do you, I guess we're voting on, do you approve 4% of this article? Yes or no? Can I use my yellow one?
Just use this one. I want it to stop.
So do I.
In theory, as long as it's always changing, it can go forever. That's the problem. Yeah. Well, then you gotta go get more.
Like I'm in church.
We're actually not at this point yet. No, 0.2524%. All right, everybody, let's take a step back, okay? Everybody take a seat. They'll come around and collect the votes afterwards. Please take a seat, and we'll finish this out, hopefully. So, what the amendment is presented at this point is changing it from 0.25% to 4%. That is what we will be voting on. If we want that change, it's already been changed from originally 5% to 0.25. This is to now try to change it to 4%. Please use your pink ballots, write yes or no, and they're coming around to collect them. I know, it seems like every time there's always one. Always one. Okay, so just to be clear, has everyone voted that wanted to vote?
No, you said no.
We can't take it by hand. Now I will ask again, has everyone voted that was ready to vote or wanted to vote? Not seeing anybody saying that they haven't. Voting is now closed. They will be tallied and we'll report our findings. We're good. Okay. All right, are we ready, everyone? The suspense is immense, right? So, for the amendment to change it up to 4% fails by a vote of 20 to 29. Okay? So, Article 8 now says that it will be 0.25% as the last amendment that was approved. Please, is there any final discussion? Hearing none, it'll be on the warrant as amended. So with that, we have completed all our warrant articles today for our deliberative session. Please remember that voting will occur on March 8th at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in this gymnasium. Is there any other business to come before the meeting today? Seeing. Thank you. Please remember to turn in your ballot sheets at the station out front before you leave. Hearing no further requests for other business at this time, I will accept a motion to adjourn this meeting. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? This meeting is now closed at 1:32 p.m. I would like to thank everyone for coming today, and the Selectmen Town portion will be in 15 minutes from now, approximately 1:45 start.